An entitled jerk in line at Disney gets angry with me after I let a disabled family go ahead of him, saying that this isn't equal treatment and that he should go next as well. And I'm honestly still blown away by this guy's idiotic attitude. Here's how it all went down. Okay, so this is a story from my time working at a very popular theme park in Florida. This situation happened when I worked in attractions. One day during a moderately busy period, I was the Fast Pass line greeter. I noticed a man pacing from the Fast Pass machines to the entry lines a few times. I believe he was checking the time display at the top. If guests already had a Fast Pass for one ride, there was a certain time they would have to wait before obtaining another one, even if it was for another ride. The man seemed annoyed, but he didn't say anything. Well, a family walked up and presented a Disability Access Service Pass. This pass was given to people with different disabilities that made waiting in long lines incredibly difficult. Most allowed access to the Fast Pass lane, while a few allowed direct access onto the ride. This particular family was allowed to enter into the Fast Pass line, which had a much shorter wait than the standby line. Well, the man witnessed this interaction and waved me over to the Fast Pass machines. I asked my coworker, the single ride greeter, to look after my position while I assisted the man. He then asked about this pass and why it allowed the family such easy access to the Fast Pass line. In fact, he wanted to know where he could get one. So, without mentioning the family's personal business, I explained what a disability pass was. But when I did, this man became incredibly angry. He said to me, "Well, I want to be let into the Fast Pass line as well." I asked him, "Well, do you have a Fast Pass?" And he said to me, "Well, I can't get one yet, but I don't think it's fair that they could just walk in." I tried to explain that they have a disability pass, but he actually said to me, "So because I'm not disabled, I don't get equal treatment? I paid a lot to be here. Why is it fair that they get to skip the line and I can't?" Now, very rarely am I actually stunned into silence, but I simply couldn't believe that he was serious. I couldn't believe that he actually thought that way. I then just kind of stared at him for probably a full minute until he spoke up again. He looked at me and said, "Well?" And I just responded back by saying, "Life isn't fair, sir. You can't enter that line without a Fast Pass. I apologize." I then just walked away before he could say anything else, because seriously, I was blown away that he actually said this to me. Oh man, talk about being completely obtuse and so out of touch. This man literally said, "Oh, they get special treatment because they're disabled?" And it's like, dude, what are you talking about? Do you hear what you just said? Because in case anyone's wondering, yeah, they should get special treatment. If they're disabled, that's absolutely what they deserve. They're entitled to that. There are literally laws outlining this kind of thing. Like, are you being serious right now? Do you also get pissed off when you can't park at the front of the grocery store because all these disabled people are taking the best spots? Like, dude, what's going on right now? This is crazy. So yeah, if I was in the original poster shoes, I would be stunned as well. Because if someone actually said that to me, I would be stunned to say the least. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My fiance is burning me out because he is literally always struggling financially, especially after he suddenly quit his job right after we got engaged. Because right now, I really just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, I want to start off by saying that we've been together for 4 years. He has struggled financially pretty much always, and I have not. I've worked my butt off to be financially stable, and it's important to me that I stay that way. I encouraged him to find a stable job, and he did and was finally getting ahead financially. But after more than a year of his financial stability, we decided to move in together and he proposed. Shortly after the proposal, he unexpectedly just quit his job. I know he was burnt out and the work environment wasn't great, but it was a steady income. It was a big shock to say the least, but I tried to be supportive since I knew he was stressed to the max, and that's what partners do after all. He told me that he would at least find a side gig in the next few months while he worked on building his own business, and that at least slowed down my stress for the time being. Well, it's been 5 months now and he still hasn't found anything to bring in income, but he is working on building a business. Now, the business is not likely to bring in any income for at least several more months, and I'm not sure if it will at all because I haven't seen any progress. I do try to ask him about it, but he's still in the building phase and hasn't tried to find clients who will need the work he provides yet since he just isn't ready. I think it's a good business idea, but I worry about the actual execution. Meanwhile, he has debts he is responsible for and has burned through his money. I have loaned him some, and yet the payback date has come and gone. He asked me to help cover his car payment and gas since he uses the car to help care for my kids. I told him I was uncomfortable with that, and it turned into a multi-day argument. He's now asked me to cover his debts while he works on his business and reframes it as me investing in him because we are building a partnership together. And trust me, I get that, but what he's asking for feels indefinite to me, and when I try to put an end date to it, conversations turn vague, and I'm left feeling like I don't believe in him and I'm just unwilling to support him. And maybe I am unwilling to support him this way financially, and that's why I'm feeling so burnt out. I want to be a supportive partner, but I feel like I'm possibly possibly being taken advantage of. I can also see the side where sometimes things are tough, but partners have to support each other through sickness, health, rich and poor. I mean, that does make sense, right? I'm having a hard time because he is able-bodied and capable of bringing in income. I haven't seen any urgency or work towards at least doing something in the interim while he tries to build up his company, and that's what I need to see. When I bring this up, he always says he's working on something for his business, for a couple of weeks until he can get the next step going, almost like he doesn't have time for a side job. And I guess I feel like having money to pay current expenses is more important immediately, and he should work on building his business on the side of that rather than the other way around. I'm able to pay all the expenses, but it's making me feel financially claustrophobic, if that even makes any sense. I have goals that I have to sideline since I have his extra expenses at the moment. When I tell him I'm at capacity and I can't cover his expenses, I somehow end up feeling like I'm unsupportive and that I don't believe in him, which isn't the case. I just want him to cover his own life. He tells me everything is always mine or his, and we don't think of everything together. So seriously, what's the line between being supportive and being taken advantage of? What's the line between able to bring in income and willing to bring in income? I feel like he sees my income as sufficient for our life, so we're fine, but honestly, I'm overworked and overwhelmed, and I would like to have some breathing room where I could take a small step back at work. But when I talk about this, he says he will just work until he's 90 then, and it honestly just feels very unproductive, and I seriously just don't know what to do. Okay, I've got to be completely honest, it really does seem like he's taking advantage of you. Like, this guy literally locked you down and got married to you and then suddenly just quits his job. And now he's like, oh, I need all this money for my business, while never committing to getting a job to try and fund that business. And that doesn't make any sense to me. Why should you be the one person loaning out money to him for a business that isn't even starting up? Like, it seems like he almost found you on purpose so that you can basically bankroll his life and he can do whatever he wants with this business that clearly is going nowhere. So no, you're not unreasonable for being burned out over this, because I think I would definitely be burned out over this. You literally want to break, and this guy's like, well, I'll just work until I'm 90. And it's like, oh, okay, buddy, but what are we going to do between now and then? Because what he's asking for, in my opinion, is completely irrational and kind of crazy, which I'm willing to guess is not what you signed up for in the slightest. An entitled Karen made me cry at work as I was literally just trying to do my job as a waitress, as she treated me lower than dirt in a way that I've never been treated before in my life. Here's what happened. I'm a 19-year-old female and I'm a full-time nursing student and a part-time waitress. It's not glamorous, but it's how I afford tuition, rent, gas, and cheap coffee to keep from passing out between class and my other shifts. I'm tired, I'm always broke, and I'm trying my best. This morning I had a Sunday brunch shift, which is essentially the Hunger Games in apron form. I'm already running on 4 hours of sleep and half a granola bar. But things go from bad to worse when the entitled Karen of this story walks in. She's in her mid-50s with a Chanel bag and gives off an energy that could freeze boiling water. I greet her with my usual, "Hi, welcome in, how are you today?" But it's here that she immediately cuts me off. "Coffee, black. Don't talk to me like we're friends." So I think to myself, okay, got it. She's one of those people. I bring the coffee and she starts picking me apart like I'm a character flaw. "This table's crooked. My toast is too hard. Why are your shoes dirty?" Then came the line that absolutely broke me. After I brought her eggs for the third time because the first two weren't sunny enough, she looks at me dead in the eyes and says, "Is this really the best you can do? No wonder you're a waitress." My hands were literally shaking. I didn't even know what to say. I just stood there frozen, blinking fast to keep the tears in. And then she smiled. Not in a kind way like she was satisfied, but it was almost like she had won. When she was done, she scribbled $0 on the tip line, stared at me one last time, and walked out like she hadn't just kicked someone while they were down. Now, what did my manager do? Well, they just shrugged and said, "Some customers are difficult, let it go." But I couldn't, not really. I went into the walk-in freezer and I cried like someone had flipped a switch. Quiet, ugly sobs while frozen peas dug into my back. What she doesn't know is that I worked until 2 o'clock in the morning last night, that I studied during my 10-minute break, and that I'm trying. That this isn't just a job, it's survival. And the worst part about it is that I still had to smile to take the next table like nothing happened. So to that woman, I will say that you didn't break me, but you made today a whole lot harder than it needed to be. And to the older man at table 9 who saw my red eyes and left a $10 tip with the words "hang in there," you will never know how much that meant to me. This job isn't easy. Life isn't easy, but I'm still here and I'm still trying, even if some entitled Karen refuses to tip me. Okay, first of all, I'm so sorry that this idiot treated you like that, but oh my gosh, don't even think about that for a second. This lady is miserable. You would never want to trade places with her because I guarantee you, she lives a miserable, cold life with no love or anybody who cares about her. In my opinion, the way you treat service workers is a direct reflection of who you are on the inside. And this Karen is straight up rotten, like rotten to the core. She is not a good person. And it's so funny to me that she's like, oh, no wonder you're a waitress. As if being a waitress makes you less of a person. Like, my God, what an idiot. The fact that she thinks she can treat you like that and be like, you're below me because you're a waitress. That's proof in and of itself that she's a bad person because she clearly expects some kind of service, but she wants you to be miserable in the process. So seriously, don't think about this for a second. This lady is out of her mind crazy, and I guarantee you that she is incredibly unhappy in her miserable, weird life because chances are she has nobody left in her life because she's burned every bridge you could possibly think of. Am I the jerk for telling my mom that it's not our responsibility to somehow be responsible for all the bills and their debt as well? Because right now she's saying that because we live in her house, it is somehow still our responsibility as well. And at this point, I really just don't know what to do. I'm a 26-year-old female and I recently had a fight with my mom because my sister called out of work out of exhaustion. She works at a restaurant that overworks and mistreats her. I recently got out of a place like that again as well because it started to affect my own mental health. Well, my mom got mad at her because my sister and I have been helping pay most house expenses, and calling out is a loss of money. She says that we can't keep leaving jobs no matter the environment because there are things that have to get paid for. She currently doesn't have a job and my stepfather is not very good at managing money, so we are behind on various payments and they are in terrible debt. Well, I got upset at her for getting upset at my sister because she has been putting up with a lot for something that I feel is not our responsibility or faults. She got upset saying that we live in the house, so of course we are responsible. The back and forth continued with her bringing up irrelevant things, like if I live with my grandma, she wouldn't accept this behavior. We are close to losing our house, and this stress has been getting to me for a long time. I haven't even been able to get my own place because I put hundreds of dollars a month into this place. I even pay half of my family bills and things are still tight. They even want me to take out a loan to help pay for bills that are behind and ask my sister to sell signed merchandise just to pay things off, even though they know that means a lot to her. I feel like I should be grateful to have a place to live in and that complaining about everything that I have to pay for is entitled, but my other sister, who wasn't raised with me, disagrees, saying that the situation is unfair and that my parents are acting unfairly. So seriously, am I the jerk for getting mad at my mom about our situation? Because right now I really don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, this is some crazy crap. Why on earth are you responsible for any of their debts? Just because you live there doesn't mean you're somehow responsible. Like, if anything, they only want you there so they can milk you of more money. They're just trying to siphon as much money out of you and squeeze you for every drop. And that is literally not fair. Like, you guys don't deserve this. And from the sounds of it, the original poster literally said that the stepdad makes $100,000 a year. And it's like, buddy, how on earth are you still not paying off your own debt when you're making 6 figures a year, man? Like, what's going on? So no, there's no reason for you to be treated this way. And honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would start knocking on grandma's door and being like, look, can I please get into your place for like 6 months so that I can save up and find my own place to live? Like, this is some crazy behavior because the way your mom is treating you is not fair and you don't deserve that in the slightest. An entitled rich jerk throws a temper tantrum after I walk off a job because of the way he was talking to me, resulting in this idiot saying he's gonna go to corporate just to try and get me fired. Here's how it all went down. Okay, to start things out, I work in pest control, and recently I was at a customer's property doing their monthly service. These customers are a married couple in their late 60s or mid 70s, and they seem to be fairly wealthy. I had done their service 2 times prior, as this particular account was signed up and serviced by another colleague who ended up being forced to resign from the company, so my boss gave the account to me. They have 2 separate properties that I service. One property is a large industrial shop type building where they store a bunch of luxury vehicles and a high-end RV, whereas the second property is their personal residence. Now, these customers are very difficult to work with. They're never available when you call and try to schedule their monthly service. They're literally always out of town, always on vacations, and both have an extremely pretentious way about them, and they are just the embodiment of rich, white, and entitled. It's easy to tell that these people have never struggled financially in their lives and think that they're better than you and that you should feel honored to be in their presence. Anyways, I arrive at the shop first and the husband is there because it's all gated in and he needs to be there to give me access to the property and the shop. Well, this guy's the most unfriendly, abrasive person I've ever encountered in my life. I finish up the service and I tell the guy everything is good and I'm heading over to his home now. He then says, "Are you gonna spray?" And for reference, the plan they have with us includes 2 sprays per year in which we spray the exterior of the home and buildings with a pesticide that keeps ants and general insect pests away for a while. I tell him no, I sprayed last service, which I absolutely did. I then tell him there's no need to spray for this month, and I explain to him that he only gets 2 sprays per year with his plan. I then advised him that I could do a spray next service, but he didn't like that. He then states, well, Aaron, who was the previous technician who signed up the account, sprayed every single service. But I said that Aaron was also basically fired from the company and he should not have been doing that. The guy then says, well, I don't think we're getting what we're paying for. And by the way, this guy pays $100 a month to have his large home and large shop serviced, and he was getting free sprays on top of that every month for who knows how long. $100 a month is what I would charge for a small cafe or a restaurant, and this guy's already paying way less than what he should be. He then says he's going to call the head office just to complain. At this point, I don't feel like arguing with this guy, and I'm just done dealing with the account altogether, so I just tell him flat out, if he doesn't like our service, he can go somewhere else. And when I say that, he's now incredibly pissed off. He says to me, oh really? So you just don't give a crap? I try to stay professional, and I tell him that he seems to have a personal issue with us now that Aaron is not doing his service anymore. I tell him there's nothing further that I can do for him. He then says he's going to call the office, and I say, okay, that's fine. And I ask him if he still wants his home service done today. He then asks me, have I already paid for it? And I say yes, as his wife prepays for the year. He then says to me that you better get your butt over there right there and then. He was so angry, and it's like, oh my gosh, absolutely not. So I tell him, okay, we're done here, you're on your own. And I calmly walk to my truck and I leave. Once I'm off the property, I advise my supervisor of the situation, and then I start documenting the interaction in the service report. While I'm doing the service report, this idiot has the nerve to actually call me and ask if I'm going to his house to do the service. But I say to him straight up that no, I'm not going to be spoken to that way or be ordered around like a dog. I tell him to cancel his contract, get a refund, and find someone else. I even gave him the name of our competitor that he could call. His final words to me were to say, you think you're the boss? You can kiss my butt, you idiot. And then he promptly hangs up like the entitled man baby that he is. I mean, real mature, pal. Afterwards, his wife contacts our branch office and advises the customer service reps that she wants to speak with both managers and that her husband is going to go to social media about this grave injustice. My supervisor ended up speaking with his wife on the phone, and my supervisor told me after that he could hear the husband throwing a temper tantrum in the background because apparently if I come back to his property, I'm gonna be arrested. So I'm truly glad that I never have to deal with these entitled morons ever again, because seriously, good riddance, especially if you're gonna talk to me or my coworkers in that manner. Okay, I love what the original poster did because this is fantastic. You stood up for yourself against some idiot who thought they could boss you around, because this couple was just completely out of their mind. Like, I don't care how old or how rich you are, you're not gonna talk to someone like that and expect any kind of service. It's also nice to see that your supervisor basically had your back as well, because I've worked in businesses before where the supervisor throws you under the bus if you in any way disagree or upset a customer. That's one of the worst feelings on the planet, and I'm so glad you didn't run into that. So yeah, this guy was a complete jerk and he deserved to get shut down in the way that he did. Am I the jerk for throwing away a gift I got from my boyfriend after he literally made fun of it in front of all of his friends one night when we were drinking? Because right now I'm heartbroken and I seriously am so crushed. Here's what's going on. So me and my boyfriend have been dating for about 6 months. A little while ago for his birthday, I made him a small gift. It was a handmade mini scrapbook with some photos, some tickets from stuff that we did together, personal notes, etc. I spent a decent amount of time on it because I wanted to do something thoughtful instead of just buying something generic. When I gave it to him, he was sweet about it and he said that he loved it and put it on his shelf, and I thought that was that. But then a few days later, we were hanging out and drinking with some of his friends, and the topic of his gifts came up. My boyfriend kind of laughed and described mine as middle school relationship core, and his friends actually started laughing at me. He wasn't outright mocking me, but the way he kept describing it all and the contents like it was something childish made me feel really embarrassed. And while I smiled and laughed along, on the inside I felt kind of crushed. I didn't say anything then, but when I got home, I cried. Afterwards, I quietly took it and I threw it all away. I know that might sound petty, but I was in my feelings, and it just felt like a joke seeing it now. Definitely not something that was sweet. Like I was the only one taking it seriously. I know that he doesn't really keep anything sentimental. He keeps his place clean and decorations to a minimum, so maybe I should have just gotten him something practical for his birthday instead of making something he had no use for. Well, yesterday he noticed that it was gone and actually asked me where it went, so I told him I threw it out, and when I explained why, he told me that I was being dramatic. He said it was just a stupid joke, that I always take things too personally, and that if anything, I had overreacted instead of just telling him before. So now I feel kind of dumb. I know he didn't mean to hurt my feelings, but it still really stung, and I'm now wondering if I'm the jerk for taking it so personally and escalating by throwing the thing thing away because right now he feels like the bad guy. What should I do? Oh man, this is some really messed up stuff if you ask me. Like, you took the time to get a scrapbook together full of photos and stuff that was really important to the both of you, and he just literally sat there and mocked it in front of all of his friends. Like, that is literally super toxic and so embarrassing. And I don't know about you, but like, embarrassing your partner like that is just so weird. I can understand joking around and having that dynamic in public, but to literally go out of your way to humiliate your girlfriend like that is just so strange. She did something kind for you and you're just sitting there like, oh yeah, this is some middle school relationship core. Like, dude, why would you do that? That's so messed up. And if I'm being completely honest, I think throwing it away was way overboard. Like, if anything, maybe take it away from him and put it somewhere else, just to try and get the point across that what he said was messed up. But I think in the end, the point still matters that, yeah, what he said was really insulting. Because in my opinion, someone who's willing to make fun of you like that in front of their friends is honestly someone who, in my opinion, is throwing up a lot of red flags. So no, in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk at all for throwing that stuff away. And I'm just not buying the fact that he's like, oh yeah, well, we were tipsy, I didn't mean it. You're just being over dramatic. Like, that just doesn't stand in my opinion, and I think that's like super weird. Because what he did was super embarrassing and absolutely unacceptable, and you did not deserve that in the slightest.
Entitled neighbor tells me that his parking spot is reserved, he's going to call the landlord, and shows me his fake sign. I tell him that I am the landlord. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. Last winter around January, me, my family, and close friends were staying at our condo in Vermont for New Year's to celebrate, ski, and other things. My dad owns the 8-unit complex our condo is in, and all but one had people up for the holidays. There's a decent amount of area for parking, but when there's a lot of people there all at once, it can get tight. So one night after returning from the mountain, we parked in the spot closest to the stairs to unload everything easier. Our parking lot isn't one with actual spots or anything because it's just gravel and dirt, so it's really just eyed out and first come first serve. A few hours later, my brother went to the car to get something from the car where there was a cardboard sign left on the car. The sign read, "Reserved parking for Unit 8, handicapped," on both sides. And yes, they forgot the N in handicapped on both sides as well. Like I said, there's no specific spots for anyone. Unit 8 was one of the smaller units on the ground level, about half the size of the rest. The couple that rented there was sketchy to say the least. They had to be in their mid-20s, but we never saw them much and didn't know much about them. Let's just call them Rick and Tara. Another 20 minutes later, and I go down to the car to get some forgotten gloves. As I unlock the car, the lights alert them that someone's at the car, and through the window, Rick starts yelling at me, telling me I have to move the car by the morning or they'd have it towed. At this point, I can also realize that Rick is off of something, so I subsequently ignore him, grab my things, and head back up. I get into the condo and explain to my dad the experience I just had with Rick. At this point, he's had enough and decided he was going to go down there himself to handle things. So he goes down there to talk to him. My dad was really the only person that had met them before, but it was briefly during the leasing of their unit. He knocks on the door and it's about 30 seconds until Rick angrily answers the door. He crankily asks, "What do you want?" And my dad politely explains that no spots are reserved and that it's first come first serve. Rick instantly starts freaking out, saying that it's a handicapped spot and that they're going to call the landlord. They had little experience with my dad when they leased the place about a year before, and in that time, he was diagnosed with cancer and lost a lot of weight. With that, his appearance changed drastically. Rick didn't realize he was speaking to the landlord and kept his rant going. As my dad was going to lay it out to him, he noticed on the table in the living area that there was a pipe of sorts. Paired with the behavior and appearance of Rick at the time, my dad concluded that it was a pipe of sorts for drugs. He backpedaled out of the conversation and returned back up to our condo. When he got back in, he called the cops explaining the situation and what he saw. 30 minutes later, cops pull up and start talking to Rick. Going off what my dad told them about the pipe, one of the cops noticed it, but this time it was out in the open with a bag next to it. At that point, it was revealed that they were both using hard substances and they were both arrested. Along with that, my dad also evicted them from the property for violating terms. Obviously. We ended up renovating the whole place afterwards because who knows how long they'd been smoking that inside. The upside is that the cardboard sign still hangs in the living room and gives us a laugh each time we pass it. They may have been jerks, but at least they left us with a long-term laugh. Some people really don't understand the concept of overplaying your hand. You would think it would be instinct where if you're doing this kind of sketchy stuff in the apartment that maybe you would just want to lay low. Drawing attention to yourself would be the last thing you would think that you'd want to do. But clearly, this couple wasn't exactly thinking straight. Also, it's just a really jerk move to try and claim a handicap spot, especially when no handicap spot exists and you're not even handicapped. An entitled couple tries to steal our seats on a plane, but gets served instant karmic justice. This happened whilst I was married. I still tell the story now and get a lot of smirks and yes, karma at her best comments. So my now ex-husband and I were one of the last to board the plane as he had misplaced his boarding ticket and we had to search for it. When we got on, we were walking up the plane and could see our row. The plane was pretty much full and all settled in. A couple older than us sat in our row of 3. I checked our tickets and then asked the couple what seats they were supposed to be in, as those were ours. They refused to move. They had scored 3 seats to their 2 bottoms, whereas the row in front had a very slim girl at the window. The air hostess came over and as they were older and playing the age card, the hostess asked us to sit in the seats in front. My husband argued that in the event of an accident, our names were not on the right locations. However, the hostess said that she would swap these over. So we sat down next to the slim girl who took up no room whatsoever. The couple behind us were very loudly gloating at their win and discussing how they would have a very pleasant 14-hour trip home. My husband told me as soon as we can to recline the seats as he was pissed about their gloating. So here we are, settled, when this man starts walking up the plane with a very large man. Long dreadlocks, shoving a baguette in his mouth as he made his way up the aisle. My husband looked at me and smiled, as he realized the only spare seat was that window seat that would have been next to mine. And yes, karma took a dump on the gloating couple's lap as the man asked them to move so he could get into his seat. Once settled, he took up a lot of space. And once in the air, the lady called a hostess down and started having a fit about how we had stolen their seats and that we had refused to move when they boarded. Sadly for the lady, our argument at the start of the flight had been witnessed by the staff, as everyone else was settled in by then. So she was shut down by the staff who refused to move us. They had a miserable flight, as the guy kept getting up for the toilet, extra drinks and extra snacks. Whoever he was a complete gem of a human being. Jerk karma served. Yeah, this is a perfect example of karmic justice, I feel. I think we've all had those interactions with an older person who is actually perfectly fine, just a little older, but they really play up their age to try and take advantage of the workers around to make it look like they're in the right. And sadly, a lot of the time it works, as it did in this instance. It just didn't quite work out for them the way they wanted it to, which I think we can all celebrate just a little bit. Entitled parents try to control my bathroom breaks. So this is related to a youth church thing I always went to. We stayed at a hotel, went skiing, and had lots of sermons. We also had adult chaperones to go with us. I was on my last year there and I was 18. I had to go to the bathroom, so I very quietly got up, walked to the back, and left to the bathroom. The bathroom was 3 feet from the sermon room, so I wasn't going very far. When I left the bathroom, an entitled parent was waiting for me.
Where did you go?
The bathroom.
Why didn't you tell anyone?
I didn't think I needed to.
Well, you do. You always need to tell us where you're going.
I'm 18. I'm an adult.
Not here, you're not. We're in charge of you. You have to obey us.
I can literally go to the gas station across the street and buy cigarettes and a lighter, and you can't do a single thing to stop me. At this point, I turn and walk back into the sermon. 15 minutes later, I went to the bathroom again. I saw her and gave her a small smile as I walked by, and she just glared at me. The reason why I was so snarky? Because these were the same people who couldn't remember my name and tried to control my reading. Plus, my church was stuck-up snobs who thought they were better than the other church groups. I'm glad to be done with those jerks. Okay, so tiny bit of devil's advocate here. I understand that this parent is responsible for the kids on this trip and one gets up and walks away in the middle of the night and doesn't say anything. But you would also kind of assume that they're probably just going to the bathroom. But regardless, our original poster was 18 and was completely an adult at that point. Can't really sit there and try and control their bathroom breaks. I like this one though. It's just a small little story of someone getting put in their place. Nobody gets hurt or says anything ridiculously offensive. My sister-in-law expected me to pay her and her friend's bill, so I had to put her in her place. So I, 25-year-old female, went out for dinner for my 28-year-old sister-in-law's bachelorette party this weekend. Between my sister-in-law and my husband, 26, sister-in-law has always been the golden child of the family. Growing up, my in-laws coddled her and gave her everything that she wanted, while my husband always got the crap end of the stick. She was always the popular girl in school, cheerleader, lots of friends, all the boys loved her, and things like that. While my husband was always a little more nerdy and got picked on quite a bit. Even my in-laws would give him a hard time about this and say he needed to be more like his sister. So fast forward to today. Both my husband and I went to top schools, got our degrees, and currently have very well-paying jobs in tech. I'm not trying to sound braggy. This is just for context, but we live a very, very comfortable life. My sister-in-law still currently lives at home with my in-laws where they foot all of her bills. She had my niece, who's now 4 with her ex and is currently on marriage number 2. This past weekend, I was invited to this fancy upscale restaurant in my city for my sister-in-law's bachelorette party. She just wanted to do a nice dinner. There were 8 of us in total. At the end of the dinner, the bill comes out and the waiter hands it to me. I'm sitting there confused for a second until sister-in-law speaks up and is all, "My parents and I were talking and we're thinking you and my brother can handle the bill for this as a wedding gift, since you're not financially contributing to my wedding." I stared at her shocked for a moment and then was like, "And you didn't think to bring this up to me beforehand?" She starts going off about how we're so well off, so what's the big deal, and she's sure her brother wouldn't have an issue with it. I asked her why her fiancé doesn't foot the bill, or my in-laws, and where in her right mind she thinks it's okay to spring this on me. She started going on about how we're the wealthiest in both her and her fiancé's family, and that she didn't think I would act like this and would say yes. I told her, "Well, sorry, but I'm not your parents. Don't expect handouts from me." She called me selfish and I called her an entitled brat, paid for my half of the bill and left. Well, as expected, my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and even some of the cousins and aunts on my husband's side have been absolutely furious with me and are expecting me to apologize for the comments. I told them, over my dead body. My husband is 100% on my side, and we're debating whether or not we're even going to the wedding. I was talking to my mom and she thinks I took it too far with the comments and should just apologize to keep the peace. By the way, the bill was over $1,000. So what do you think? Am I the jerk? Okay, so we'll start this one off with no, you're definitely not a jerk. That is a very jerk move of your sister-in-law to pull in front of everyone and just expect you to pay. She deserves to be called out for it. Now, again, always trying to play devil's advocate here a little bit, I do kind of understand where our original poster's mother's coming from, in that she could have paid the bill just to keep the peace and not make a scene. However, I would say you have to address this to her afterwards in private, and let her know that this kind of behavior is not acceptable. Just because she has everything given to her and doesn't understand the value of $1, doesn't mean other people are gonna pay for all her stuff for her. She needed a wake-up call one way or another. You did the right thing. Honestly, I just kind of feel sorry for her husband-to-be at this point. Who knows what he's gonna have to be dealing with in the future. So, I wore a wedding dress to a wedding. But hear me out. So my friend, 20-year-old female, and I, 19-year-old male, have been friends for a few years and she recently got engaged. A week ago, I got a DM from her for a small costume party she was hosting as a celebration for getting engaged. I asked if there was a theme and she said there wasn't. I'm a cosplayer, so I had a lot of choices. I didn't want to roll up in an anime cosplay, so I thought it would be funny to go to an engagement party as the corpse bride. I arrived at her house yesterday and everything seemed normal. A few people complimented my costume and I was having a lot of fun. After 10 minutes, my friend's fiancé walked out in a black tuxedo and announced this was actually their wedding. Apparently, my friend saw a video of someone doing this and wanted to do the same. He asked us all to go to the backyard for the ceremony to begin. I went straight to him. I asked him if I should quickly go home and change my outfit and that I would get back before it started. He told me that it was fine, since I didn't know this was the wedding. I trusted him and followed everyone outside. They got married and everything seemed good. The reception was just in their house again, so everyone just walked back inside and picked up where they left off. I tried talking to my friend and celebrating with her, but she kept making excuses to not talk to me. I assumed it was just because she was tired from the big day and wanted some alone time. I didn't bother her after that, and the party soon ended. I got home and half an hour passed when my phone started getting notifications. I checked and it was my friend texting me. She was cussing me out, telling me how I ruined her wedding. I was really confused and asked what I did. That only made her more angry. She told me it was basic knowledge not to wear a wedding dress to a wedding. I reminded her that I had no idea it was a wedding and that I asked her now husband if I should change and he said it was fine. She didn't respond, but I got a text from her husband. He asked why I would tell her he said it was fine. I told him he said it was fine. Then he said how I should have changed anyways and it's my fault that the two are now fighting over this. I've tried texting her that I was sorry, and if I had known, I wouldn't have done it. I woke up today and saw her and her husband have blocked me on everything. So, am I the jerk for not changing out of the wedding dress when I found out it was actually a wedding? Okay, so I actually find this one kind of funny. Now I want you to keep in mind our original poster is male. So this was kind of more just a joke thing. This isn't another female coming to this party dressed as a bride. There's no soap opera level drama going on here. I'm totally behind our original poster's idea to come to this party as the corpse bride. I think that's hilarious. But I really think our bride in this story is absolutely overreacting. Now, don't get me wrong. I could understand her maybe being a little bit peeved when she found out about this. But you would have to have common sense kick in and understand that they didn't know. Should our original poster have gone home and changed? Maybe. But he was given the thumbs up by the groom, so he felt it was okay. Maybe they should have checked in with the bride first and let her know about the situation. But having it escalate this far just seems completely irrational. I don't know. I really think this story is just more funny than anything. What do you guys think? I canceled my mother-in-law's phone plan after she decided to just give it to my nephew. Okay, am I the jerk here? Everyone around me says yes, but I feel super gaslighted by my husband's family right now. We're both late 20s, no kids. We added my mother-in-law to our cell plan a few years ago when we got married because she lives alone and didn't have a cell phone. My husband thinks it will keep her safer to have one for emergencies. At the time we added her for her phone and plan, it was around $20 extra per month. Plan costs have gone up and she got a nicer phone, so now it's close to $50 per month. Pretty steep with the way the economy is, am I right? Anyway, my husband's brother has a young kid. He's 8. He's a nice kid, but not my responsibility. When I called my mother-in-law's cell phone a few days ago, my nephew answered it. I asked him if he was at grandma's house and if I could talk to her. He said no, he was at his house and grandma had given him her cell phone to keep because his parents wouldn't get him one. My mother-in-law didn't tell me or my husband about this and I got pretty angry. I'm already not thrilled about having to pay for her to have a cell phone. I'm definitely not happy about paying for my 8-year-old nephew to have it. I went to her house and told her that if she wasn't going to use the phone, I was going to take it off our plan, and that I wanted the iPhone back from my nephew because my husband's screen is cracked and he can have hers. It'll save us a few $100 since we won't have to buy a new phone. Needless to say, she's mad now because
It's her phone to do with as she pleases, and she wants nephew to have it.
I told her it's not her phone, and we won't pay for it if he's using it. I told hubby I was canceling it, and then I did. I told him if she wants a phone again or wants nephew to have one, she can sign up for her own plan. He's mad that I did that. Mother-in-law is mad as well. Nephew and his parents are mad, but I did get the phone back since it's no longer working on our plan. So, am I the jerk? I don't think I am. We all have to make cuts where we can with this economy. No, I'm gonna have to say you're not being the jerk here. Tying back to our previous story about the bridesmaid dinner, I feel it's really rude to assume someone's gonna pay for something for you. I could understand if a conversation had happened beforehand, but to just go ahead and make the assumption that this person's gonna continue to pay for the phone after you've given it to someone else takes a lot of audacity. I feel the only argument they would have here is that they feel she's being petty. And if that's the case, they clearly don't view having to pay for one extra phone as a big deal. So why don't you just do it yourself instead of shirking that responsibility and putting it on someone else? It just feels like a scummy move. My ex tried pulling some sneaky moves, but I wasn't having it, and as a result, ruined his daughter's first birthday. My ex's new wife called me 3 weeks ago and said that she just realized her daughter's birthday was on my week. She asked me to please bring my son to the party or drop him off the night before and they'd bring him back the next morning. She was very entitled about it. She presented me with 2 options when I don't have to do either. I said I would think about it and she got huffy and said he has to be at his little sister's party. I again said I would think about it and she continued to argue, so I hung up. The day before the party, I asked my son, "Do you want to go to your sister's sister's birthday party. He said he did, so I texted her to tell her that we would be there and asked her for the time of the party. She told me it was at noon. So we got there at 12:30 and there were no other cars, which was weird. We went inside and my ex said he needed to talk to me, and I said that wasn't necessary and asked where the party guests were. He said he needed to prepare me before I saw his wife. I said, why? Is she pregnant or something? He said she was, and I just rolled my eyes. I again asked where the party guests were. He said the party was at 2, but they wanted to make sure I had time to put myself together before the party. I told him he needed to quit with the soap opera drama because I don't have time for it. I took time out of my day to accommodate them, but they blew it. I'm not hanging out with them in an empty house for over an hour, and I'm not wasting gas to leave and come back. I took my son to the park and we had a nice day, but my ex texted me a bunch about how I was punishing his daughter for the pregnancy. I don't care that his wife is pregnant. My only response was a text that said, grow up. My son asked about his sister's birthday, and I said there was a mix-up with the party time, which is true, and they would all celebrate together when he was at his dad's. So he was chill. My mom said I hurt the birthday girl, but she's 1. She's not going to notice who's at her party. My mom told me to be the bigger person, but I feel that there's a limit to that. I'm not going to allow lying and trickery in my ex any more than I would reward it if my 6-year-old did it. Am I the jerk for leaving and not coming back? Okay, I feel like there's a lot to read between the lines here. Our original poster seems to be holding a lot of hostility towards their ex here. It comes out in just the subtleties of their interactions, her rolling her eyes and things like that. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's a history here, and that's why they're no longer together. But considering our original poster is accusing other people of being dramatic and childish, I would have to say that she needs to take a look at her own actions. You have a child with this person. This person now has a new child. I understand that they're only 1 and you don't think that they're gonna miss their brother from the party, but that's not the point. The only person being punished here is your son, which isn't fair at all. I feel our original poster was being extremely petty and could have been the bigger person here. You say you don't care, but your actions speak otherwise. Why are you acting like this? Is it so hard to sit in a room with these people for an hour and just play nice? Again, be an adult. These people are still going to continue to be in your lives. As long as you have a son with this man, you need to learn to get along. In your own words, grow up. I got back at my homophobic father by pretending to have a boyfriend and bringing him over for Christmas dinner. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. Ever since I can remember, I've been completely and utterly under the thumb of my father. All of us have been. Us being me, my younger brother, little sister, and my mother. My father is a raging jerk, a male chauvinist, over-the-top macho type of guy. And growing up, I've always been the victim of his dislike, because I didn't really fit in with his image of the ideal son. I was, for lack of a better word, a bit of a girly boy growing up. I wanted nothing more than to dance and frolic around in dresses. When I was 4 or 5, my mother had this big box of dress-up clothes. She brought it down from the attic and I immediately picked out the prettiest, frilliest, golden-colored dress I could find. I pranced around in it and declared myself a princess, and that I was now a girl. This went on for a few months, but strictly during the day when my father was away at work. I watched ballet videos with my mother, a soft-spoken and open-minded woman who worked part-time as a social worker in those days. I was happy, careless. My father was and is an authoritarian figure. He had himself legally emancipated at an early age just so he could join the army ahead of time. After 3 years in the army, he left as a lower-level officer and started a career as a seaman. He was a captain when he and my mother met and had me. Later, he left his naval career and became a traveling salesman. Think Don Draper if Don Draper was a 6'4" Western European man with curly graying hair and piercing blue eyes. I've always found him incredibly intimidating, and I think my mother did too. Anyway, long story short, he came home early one day. He saw me in my dress and told me in an icy voice, "Go take that off. After you take it off, go sit on the sofa." So I took it off, little hands trembling, and next he summoned my mother into the room, demanded to know what the hell she'd been doing to this boy. I had never seen a person shrink so much so quickly. I myself was like a tiny little fly on the wall at this point, barely present. He took the box with clothes up to the attic, put a lock on it, and informed us that we were not to touch it until my wife gives me a daughter. It stayed there in the attic untouched until my sister was born 10 years later. My father took more of an interest in my upbringing at this point. He took me to see Navy ships, races, and made me go to martial arts. He seemed determined to make a man out of me, and in some ways he succeeded. One thing he allowed me to do was keep my long hair, knowing I was bullied at school for it and wanted at times to cut it off for that reason. He insisted I keep my long hair, face the bullies, and beat the crap out of them every time they called me a girl to show them how much of a girl I was. I did just that. It toughened me up in some way, but it also damaged me in other ways. By the time I went to college, I had grown into a pretty normal dude. I wasn't gay, I wasn't even a crossdresser, although deep down inside I still had those urges. I tried desperately to fit in and be what he wanted me to be, but I also grew more and more resentful. In college, I made a lot of different friends, including some guys I met in an acting class we both took. One of them was pretty much your typical flaming and fabulous type of guy. He was as over-the-top gay as my father was over-the-top straight. I told him one night when we were drinking about my upbringing and my terrible father. And my friend, let's call him Paul, suggested I should get back at him. I asked him how. Basically, why not pretend like I was gay? But not just say it over the phone or something, or even to my father's face in person. No, much better. I'd hint for weeks in advance about having met somebody and being in a relationship. I'd say it was a girl. I would ask if I could bring Paula over for dinner at Christmas when the whole family would be there, and I'd arrive at the house with Paul instead. So I did exactly that. I went to the house at Christmas, dressed to the nines. I told my father and mother that Paula was caught up, but she's about to come. I'll just open the door. So I sat down with my family. Cousins, uncles, aunts, my grandparents, all just as conservative as my father. I waited for a while, heard the door and rushed to open it. Walked into the living room where everyone was gathered and introduced Paul, my boyfriend. I've never seen a room go so quiet. People literally gasped for air. My sister, brother, and mother looked both scared and amused, but everyone else was in shock. My father seething. He just completely lost it. Right in front of everyone. Veins bulging in his neck to the point where they looked like they were about to pop. He told me to leave. Ordered me, essentially. My grandparents urged him not to make a scene, but he made one. I replied calmly how he should do it. Call the police and explain the situation to them. I knew he never would. He knew some of the officers well. It wasn't a call he would be willing to make, and it wasn't a situation he was willing to explain. I called his bluff, and he just sank. Like, he shrank before my eyes. My mother and grandmother had to calm him down. He walked out of the room defeated. I just stood there not believing my own eyes. I finally felt free. Like, I didn't care anymore. He had scared me for so many years. Terrified me, and now I could see him for the caricature he really was. It felt amazing. Paul and I stayed the whole evening. He played his part perfectly. He eventually managed to charm some of my aunts and even my grandmother, who told me unironically how glad she was that I found such a delightful man, and that he reminded me of her favorite TV character, Mr. Humphreys from Are You Being Served? My father later came back to the room, sat in the corner, and refused to meet my gaze. He drank too much whiskey. My mother kept talking to him in a hushed tone of voice, and he kept making a go-away gesture with his hand. I stayed away from home for a while. I've already explained to everyone how it had been a prank, how I had to make a point and get back at my father for how he had treated me. Pretty much everyone sympathized. I didn't lose anyone in my family over what happened, but my father lost a lot of respect in people's eyes, I feel. He was always in control of things. He always directed the scene, but now he doesn't anymore. I do my own thing. My sister does her own thing. He cannot order people around anymore, and I feel like a fool for ever letting him. I can now wear whatever the hell I want to wear, enjoy whatever hobbies I want to enjoy, and nothing changes. He threatened to disinherit me that night. He threatened a lot of things, but in the end, something inside him just broke. All of my relationships since have been with women, and I have since married and had my own children. My younger brother came out as gay eventually, but by that time, my now aging father had mellowed down somewhat, and as he already had grandchildren and his legacy is thus secured, he didn't seem to mind too much. It helps that my brother is a muscular gym rat and that they can bond over sports, more than my father and I ever did. But whenever the subject of sexuality comes up, my father is still incredibly awkward. I don't think it will ever change, but I feel my revenge has been pretty successful in the end. He was being a jerk and somebody had to show him. I think our original poster handled this pretty well, honestly. He went to an extreme to show just how extreme his father was being in return, and it seems like the message may have gotten across. He wasn't happy about it at first, and it probably took a little while for the message to really set in. But the fact that his brother later came out as gay and dad was okay with it does show that there was some growth there. And I'm sure this interaction had a lot to do with that. As our poster said, he got a lot of backlash from the rest of the family as well. So maybe with it coming from so many different directions that what he's doing is wrong, someone was able to get through and it finally clicked for him. I'm really happy with how the story ended. Everyone seems to be in a better place as a result. I locked myself and my newborn in the guest bedroom so that I could finally spend some time with her away from my wife. My daughter is 2 weeks old. I've barely held her since she was born. My wife constantly has her. When I do get to hold her, my wife just starts crying hysterically until I give her back. I asked her why, and she said she was anxious that something would happen to our daughter, and that's why she felt the need to hold her so close. No matter how much I tried to reassure her, she just wouldn't let up. I practically begged her to just let me hold her so that my wife could shower, eat, and care for herself. But nothing worked. I felt like I was losing precious bonding time with my daughter, so I did what I thought I had to do. My wife fell asleep on the sofa with our child. So I took her, went to the guest bedroom, and locked the door. My wife woke up shortly after, very upset that our daughter wasn't with her. She soon realized I was in the guest room and begged me to open the door. She was crying, kicking, and screaming. I didn't open it though and spent a good couple of hours with our daughter in there. Apparently, my wife had called her mom because I got a call from my mother-in-law cussing me out, saying how I shouldn't be taking a newborn from her postpartum mother and other things like that. My wife has been furious with me and won't speak. And I'm just so frustrated because I really just wanted to spend quality time with my child. But maybe that wasn't the way to do it. Am I the jerk? Okay, so this is another one where I feel like I can see it from both sides. I absolutely understand how our original poster feels, that this is an important time with the baby, and the way that the mother feels, he feels as well. He wants to be able to spend some time with his child as well. Now, that being said, yes, mother is going through a lot right now. I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to pretend to be one, but we all know about postpartum depression. I think it's pretty clear from her actions here that she doesn't seem to be behaving rationally. And to be honest, right now, it's kind of hard to expect her to be able to. I really think that she needs to talk to someone. This is something that she does need to get over. Her husband needs to be able to spend time with the child as well. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, but in terms of everything being fair and equal, the mother's behavior is over the top here. My sister's ex ruined her only birth experience, so I made sure he'd never forget her. When I was 14 and my oldest sister Sarah was 22, we found out that she was pregnant with Paul, her boyfriend of 4 years. They immediately got engaged and they were really happy, for a time. Sarah had a horrible pregnancy. About 16 to 18 weeks in, the wonder of creating a human life evaporated within her. She developed hyperemesis, which, if you don't know, is really bad morning sickness. She was in constant pain. She developed gestational diabetes and just all around hated the experience. Around this time, Paul, the then fiancé, started getting sick of the complaining. I believe the argument was, "Your body was built to do this, it can't be that bad." Sarah was due around Valentine's Day, and Paul's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Doe, were both very excited, both about the grandkid and the fact that he could be born on a holiday. She was very against that and really hoped that her son wouldn't be born on a holiday, even one as small as Valentine's Day. Her birthday sometimes falls on Easter and she hates it. She was worried it might make him feel that his day isn't very much about him. Well, Mrs. Doe says something like, "Well, if you name him Valentine or Valentino, then that'll make the day even more special to him." Again, sister hated the idea. She thought it was so tacky. He'd be bullied for it and just really didn't like the name Valentino. Paul loved it, but agreed to go with a more average name like Daniel or Jared. Fast forward to February and she was ready to get this over with. Sarah had officially been put on bed rest because while standing or walking, her blood pressure took unexpected spikes and dips. I look back now and I really do feel bad for her. She was doing her best to avoid giving birth on Valentine's Day because, again, she didn't want him to be born on a holiday. Unfortunately, births happen when they happen, and that baby was gonna come on Valentine's whether she wanted him to or not. I remember waiting out in the waiting room with my dad, brothers, and Paul, who couldn't stand to be in the delivery room because it was gross. I was so mad that he could have gone in but wouldn't because he thought my sister was gross while giving birth. Whereas I had to stay outside because I was too young to go in with my mom and other sister. Dad went home with the youngest 2 brothers while the oldest, Zeke, stayed to watch me because I refused to leave. 16 hours after Sarah went into labor, my little nephew was officially part of the family on the evening of Valentine's Day. Unfortunately, Sarah was not okay. She had to have an emergency cesarean section and while doing the operation discovered that the back of her uterus facing her spinal cord had a very large and very severe, thankfully non-cancerous tumor. When I say large, I mean it was twice the size of a standard uterus. The doctors were shocked and didn't understand why nobody had noticed it on an ultrasound. It accounted for her severe back pain and blood pressure issues. The doctors immediately went in for more surgery to remove the tumor, but sadly ended up having to perform a full hysterectomy. This meant that my nephew would be Sarah's only child. Now, while Sarah was in for surgery, Paul was taking care of everything baby related to make sure his son was okay. In my 14-year-old self's memory, I remember him being suitably distraught, but I didn't really pay him much mind and spend my time in the waiting room with my mother and other sister. Zeke, however, wanted to be a good future brother-in-law and made sure that Paul was okay. He found Paul filling out the baby paperwork on his own, looking, in my brother's words, like he had not a single worry in his mind. Zeke asked why Paul didn't wait for Sarah to fill out the paperwork as she should be out of surgery within the hour, and Paul said he just wanted her to get her rest and heal. That checked out with Zeke as he was 16 and didn't know any better at the time. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. No, he wouldn't. He knows how much she hates that name, and still she'd need to sign the paperwork too. My fellow peoples of Reddit, I regret to inform you that Paul forged Sarah's signature on the paperwork and waited until she was out of surgery to hand said paperwork over. My sweet nephew that was born on Valentine's Day was named Valentino on his official birth certificate. I still to this day don't know why Paul and his family were so insistent about the name. He had even picked out a different one with my sister. And before you ask, no, he was never brought up on forgery charges because his parents were witnesses to her signing the papers, even though they only got there at the last minute. So Sarah dumped him and got her son's name changed a month later. She was willing to do split custody with him because that's her son's father, and she wants the kid to know him. But Paul vanished and she never heard anything back, which seemed weirdly out of character to us, until a mutual friend on Facebook was tagged in his wedding picture 6 months later. Paul had apparently started cheating on her not long after she got pregnant. Sarah was livid, but there wasn't much she could do, so she filed for child support and continued to live her best life. Until 6 years later. And this is where the revenge begins, my friends. So Sarah has been a single mother for the past 6 years and has been amazing at it. At this point in my career, I've been a hairdresser for about 6 months at our local Great Clips. I'm working one day and who is seated before me but Paul's wife, Jane herself. I take her back for a trim and she clearly has no idea who I am. That adds up because a mutual friend that still keeps in contact with Paul said that Jane doesn't know a thing. She has no idea about Sarah, that she was the other woman, or that Paul actually has a kid that he's been infrequently paying child support for. She's in the dark on it all. I told myself not to be a jerk and treat her like a normal customer, which I did. Now, at this point, Jane was heavily pregnant, so a lot of our conversation was about that. She loved being pregnant, but it was hard. Her husband was so unsympathetic, big shocker, and she was due in 10 weeks, and they still hadn't picked out a name for their baby girl. Ladies and gentlemen, this was my chance. I asked what kind of name she was looking for, and she said, I want something unique and unusual, but not ridiculous like Bryant Leia. You know the kind of names I'm talking about. And Paula suggested so many already, and she didn't like any of them. So I, the conniving little weasel that I am, said, what about Sarah? My sister's name isn't actually Sarah. She was named after an older family member that passed not long before she was born, but there was no female equivalent for this name, so our parents created one. It's a beautiful name and just what Jane was looking for. She loved it. She stuck by it. And I found out by stalking her Facebook months later that she had put her foot down about it, and that was their daughter's name. Now Paul has a daughter with his ex's name to remind him every day about her, and to also remind him to pay his child support. Little nephew is 10 years old now with a new name and no contact with his biological father, though we do still sometimes call him Val as a family nickname. He likes it, but doesn't want to bring it to school, so it's staying a family nickname. Sarah pretends to hate that we call him that, but in a joking way. As long as he likes it, she doesn't have a problem with it. And she's seeing a new guy who's really great and like a father to Val. But thank God she got rid of the other jerk. This story is almost too perfect. I really hope this is real. All the pieces came together so nicely in the end. And yeah, screw this guy. He deserves it. The only issue I have is what happens when Jane finds out about all of this. I mean, surely he can't keep it a secret forever that he has another kid that he's paying child support for. And I don't think she would appreciate being a part of this little joke, as funny as it may be. But honestly, I'm glad Sarah ditched this guy and she was doing well on her own. Sounds like he only would have just caused stupidity and problems along the way. My mom made me apologize to my siblings for trying to take my own life. This happened when I was 12. I didn't grow up in the best household. Forced homeschooling, no sports or outside activities. So really, I was stuck home all the time. My mom taught me things while homeschooling, which was just me in the background watching her teach my siblings. I'm the youngest of 4. But anyway, that's really besides the point. The main one is that I was incredibly depressed. I tried to take my own life in the bathtub and got close to passing out before my body of course forced me up for air. As a child, I freaked out because I knew what I was trying to do, but not exactly why. So I quickly got dressed and went straight to my mom. She then proceeded to ask how I tried, made me show her the bathroom, and then just shook her head and sighed. Called all my siblings to the dining room, had them sit down, looked at me and said, "Do you want to tell your siblings what you just tried to do and apologize?" All I remember thinking was, is she serious? But bit my tongue and told them anyway. I tried to take my own life. I'm sorry. There wasn't really a reaction. My 2 eldest siblings kinda just shrugged. But then my one sister that's just a year older later told me that she was happy I didn't do it. So yeah, it was never talked about again. I'm not even sure if my dad was told. There was many other attempts later in life, but I'm 21 now, still depressed and have self-body image issues. I live with my boyfriend of 6 years and barely talk to any of them now. I really don't think I was being the jerk here. Yeah, no kidding. This has got to be one of the worst mothers I've ever heard of. What kind of reaction is that? Like, there barely was a reaction. Most parents would be completely distraught over something like this. I don't understand how she could just shrug it off so easily. There's really not a lot to build on this one. She's a horrible mother, and I think anyone is going to agree with that. My mother-in-law is suing me for not letting her see my kids one weekend. She thinks they're her kids. This is what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. So this has been my week/weekend, guys. Friday night around 10:30 p.m., my mother-in-law texted my hubby informing us that she would be at the apartment to get the kids Saturday evening. This was worded as an FYI, not a request. At the time, she was informed that we have plans for Saturday evening, but she could get them Sunday if weather permitted. She argued this, but gave in. Saturday night comes and the roads are not safe. Mixed snow and rain all day with more in the forecast for Sunday. My husband texts my mother-in-law that the kids wouldn't be going anywhere because of the road conditions. She agreed that the roads were bad and we thought that was the end of it. On Sunday, my husband went to work and the kids and I went about our normal weekend routine. Then, at noon, my mother-in-law shows up on my porch informing me she was taking the kids, and also had the stuff to cut their hair, which had never been discussed. I reiterate that husband had told her the kids were not leaving the house because the roads were not safe. She proceeded to scream at me that she can take the kids whenever she wants to because
They are mine.
I told her, have a good day, and then shut and locked the door. I then texted my husband to let him know what had gone on and to expect her to contact him. She sat in my parking lot for 10 minutes screaming at him and then left. When she left, I called a friend to come over in case she came back before my husband got home from work. The day was going as normal until at 3 p.m. when someone tried to walk into the apartment without knocking, and then began pounding on the door. Mother-in-law was back, knowing there was about 5 hours until husband got home. I did not open the door. She started calling and texting my husband at work, telling him to call her or she would call the cops. He did not. About an hour before he got off, she texted him saying she had called and was waiting for them to arrive. My husband took a different route home, which allowed him to avoid walking past her car, and we went about our normal night. Kids, bath, and bedtime since there was school the next day. She finally pulled out of the parking lot at 9:30 p.m., 6.5 hours after arriving. The texts and calls haven't stopped, and today she left my husband a voicemail threatening legal action if he doesn't call her and let her see the kids. We've removed her from all of the kids' information at their schools in case she tries to go that route, and are currently looking for a lawyer to make sure nothing happens. Can someone please tell me what is wrong with this lady? I really wish I could help you out there, original poster. Definitely something is wrong with this woman. I don't know if she's delusional or what, but this sounds like it could be a potentially dangerous situation for the kids. I feel like they definitely made the right call in having her removed from all the kids' information and such. She seems to be a little off her rocker, at least at the moment. I wonder if this is something that she's been dealing with for a long time, or has this come out of the blue? Either way, mom and the kids are safe, so that's all that matters. I really don't want my disabled sister coming to my wedding. I know this sounds awful, but please, hear me out. I'm a 22-year-old female and my sister, Anna, is 21 and is special needs. She has severe autism, and while she is verbal, most of her communication is physical, like sign language due to her social discomfort. She does speak around family though and has pretty bad cognitive skills. She can't comprehend boundaries and lives with our parents so they can best watch her. I'm getting married in 3 months. We planned a simple wedding and reception at my fiancé Michael's parents' farm and barn. Since it's all going to be DIY and we aren't planning anything too expensive, we can do things pretty quickly since flowers, food, and decor will be provided by his family. I sent out invites last week and I asked that Anna not come. I told my parents I understood that would mean they may not show up, but it was just a heads up. Why no Anna? She has an issue with touching Michael and trying to kiss him. At times when we were at my parents' house, Anna would try and grab Michael's hands, try to lean in to kiss him, or would have really bad shutdowns if she wasn't allowed to be directly next to him. We've tried speaking to her, but there's only so much we can do when she doesn't really understand. I told my parents I just want one day for Michael to be my partner and not Anna's comfort person. They called me selfish and asked how I expected them to agree to something like this. They told me Anna is disabled and may never experience a wedding of her own. And while I have Michael for probably the rest of our lives, she'll have no one. And that Michael and I can be a little more understanding to the reality of her life. I feel like a total jerk. And what they're saying has really gotten to me and I'm starting to question my decision. Update: my parents called me letting me know they won't be coming, and that it's best I don't bring Michael around anymore since I've chosen some man over my sister. They told me that Anna wanting to kiss Michael and hug him is normal for women her age, and that she doesn't understand what her feelings mean. I suggested they try to redirect her during the wedding, but they said Michael is going to be family to her and he needs to get over it. I suggested they watch the wedding via web and they said that's not fair, and that they deserve to see things in person. I asked if I could pay for someone with proper credentials to watch her that day while they pay attention, and they asked what I would do when they died and if I'd pawn her off every time. I dropped the unfortunate truth bomb that I don't want to put any more of my life aside for Anna anymore. I did it up until I turned 18, and that Anna is not my life's responsibility and I won't be her keeper. I assured them I'd pay for her care, but if she's okay doing this to Michael, then I worry for if I ever do choose to have children and what she would do to them. They said I was sick for suggesting she'd do anything to my future children and hung up on me. They sent a lengthy text telling me not to contact them until I could do the right thing. So that's where we are. What do you guys think? Am I being a jerk about all of this? Okay, I feel like this one is not cut and dry at all. This definitely has a lot of gray areas here. Now, I'm not a doctor, and I haven't had any kind of extended contact with someone with autism like this, so it's hard for me to really give any input on Anna's behavior here. All I can do is try and see things from our original poster's point of view, and in that, I do see how her sister's behavior would make her uncomfortable, and that this isn't something that she would want happening at the wedding. Now, I would also think that having to live with Anna for 18 years, that she would understand her condition a little bit more. While I was reading, I thought the same thing that the mother said, which is that Anna is an older woman and doesn't understand the feelings that she's having probably. To that extent, it needs to be a little more forgiven, I think. And that is what has happened up until this point. But our original poster just wanted one day of the wedding to not have to worry about this kind of thing. While I do think it would suck, Anna not being able to go to the wedding and getting to see her sister get married, which I'm sure would make her very happy, again, I understand where our original poster is coming from. Now, I'm not saying that she's right, because I honestly don't know, but I understand her feelings. Let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I had to turn off the home Wi-Fi so that my wife would stop working. I, 35, have been married to my wife Jen for 3 years, and before that, we dated for 6 years. She's also 32 weeks or 8 months pregnant with twins. She's my best friend and I absolutely adore her, with one minor flaw. She's a huge workaholic / perfectionist. While we both have very well-paying jobs, Jen's job is way more stressful and time-demanding. Even though she's brilliant and amazing at what she does, she often works around the clock, on average 60-hour weeks, at home and in the office. This wasn't a problem before, but about 2 weeks ago, her doctor told her to take a step back from work, i.e. to go on early leave, since the stress was starting to cause her a couple of health issues, even though the babies themselves are fine. However, being the workaholic that she is, she's still been working from her laptop 6 to 8 hours almost every day, which, fine. I understand that she had a couple of cases that she needed to finish, but most days she was so focused on work that she was forgetting to eat meals and falling asleep at her desk. So yesterday when I got home, I realized she had done the same thing again. I woke her up and told her that she needed to go rest in bed. She insisted she was fine and said there was an emergency with a client of hers and she just needed to finalize some things for a coworker. I asked her to just take a break first and take a nap and eat, but she said that she would once it was done and that it wouldn't take her more than an hour. I told her fine, but no longer than an hour even though I was pretty annoyed. So 2 hours later, when she was still working, I became frustrated and unplugged the Wi-Fi and put the cable out of sight. The only purpose of this was to cut her off from work on her laptop because she clearly had no intention of stopping. Once she realized, she yelled at me, called me a jerk, and she said I was treating her like a child and accused me of being controlling, condescending, and borderline abusive. I told her that she's being stupid and just to let the coworker that asked for her help to handle it. I said that she was free to use the mobile hotspot on her phone, or figure out the router herself, but otherwise I would plug it back in when I woke up, which I did. She was so mad that she slept in the guest room, and when I went to apologize the next morning for calling her stupid, not for cutting the internet, she said that she can't even look at me. She hasn't said another word to me since. I'm starting to feel like I might have been a bit extreme, even if I only did it out of concern. But honestly, she's overdoing it by trying to meet deadlines that she's not even supposed to be responsible for. So, am I the jerk? I really don't think you're being the jerk in this situation. You're honestly only looking out for your wife's best interests. She really does sound like a workaholic. And with her condition now, she needs to be taken care of, and to take care of herself. I understand for some people it's hard to relinquish control like that, and as a result, they tend to get angry and defensive, which is what we're seeing here. I hope she really does come to understand that you're just doing this out of concern for her, and she does need to learn when to take a break. If ever there's a time, it's when you're 8 months pregnant with twins. Lady, we can already tell you're a superhero. You don't need to prove anything else to anyone. Get some rest. I announced to my sexist stepfather that I will not be sharing my college funds with my stepbrother. I, 18-year-old female, found out a couple months ago that I got into my dream school early, that happens to be an Ivy League school. I was overjoyed, and my parents were happy for me too. We're not too well off, but my grandma saved up money for her only granddaughter, me, to have a college fund, which is more than enough to fund my tuition. Now, I have a stepbrother, Damon, 19-year-old male. He took a gap year, not really, and he's going to college too, but he's going to a college less costly than mine. Honestly, he's only going to attend college because of his dad's incessant nagging. So recently, my parents, moreover my stepdad, is bugging me about sharing my college funds with Damon. I don't want to, or else I'll have debt after graduation and it will shatter all my financial planning after college. Last night at dinner was my breaking point when stepdad asked again. I said no, then he said to my mom,
"Well, anyway, she's a girl. Why waste that much money on her college?"
I completely lost it. I yelled out, "You know what? I've had enough. First of all, it's not even your money to decide what to do with. It's the money my grandma left for my college tuition. Besides, my gender doesn't define my intelligence. I got into an Ivy League school, didn't I?" Then Damon says with a grin that I need to accept that he's smarter. Now, here's where I may have been the jerk. I said, at least I have plans and ambitions unlike Damon, who told everyone he was taking a gap year when he actually failed, which was true. Stepdad and Damon stormed off and my mom called me a jerk. But what do you guys think? No, I think that comment was entirely fair game. I think everything you said was completely true. It is your money. It was left to you by your grandmother for your college tuition. You got into a great school that you actually care about and want to get the education. It sounds like your stepbrother would really just be a waste of the money and end up dropping out, which isn't something that you would want to financially be contributing to. And stepdad probably knows this as well, which is why he's trying to pawn off some of the funds to you. Stepbrother wanted to cut in with a snarky comment and got one right back. And he's just pissed that yours was better. You're not the jerk. Don't feel like one. People need to take responsibility for their own actions. Or their own kids. If you want to go to college, you pay for it. If you want your kid to go to college, you pay for it. Why do you expect someone else to cover that cost for you? You clearly understand how much money it is and how hard it is to get that kind of money. Else you would have it readily available already, wouldn't you? So cut the girl some slack. And that sexist comment, screw you. I refuse to pay for a pair of shoes my son supposedly destroyed. For some general context, I, 37-year-old female, am a divorced mother of 2 and I have custody of my kids for the majority of the year, due to the fact that their father, 38-year-old male, travels for work. But when he's in town, it's not uncommon for him to want to spend the week with them. My kids were at their father's for the week last week, and when they came home, my son, 17-year-old male, brought me a receipt for a pair of $700 shoes that he needed to pay for. Obviously, I was confused, and so my son explained that while at school, he accidentally stepped on a kid's shoes. My kid's shoes were muddy from being outside, and apparently the mud caused so much damage to these expensive shoes that they needed to be replaced. I called my ex to get some further clarification, and he told me that it was our job as parents to set a good example to our kids and show that we fix things when we make mistakes. Which is why he told this kid's mom that I would pay for a new pair of shoes. His reasoning for this was that I received child support from him and that I should have enough money to replace these shoes. I ended up calling the mother of this kid to try and talk to her to explain that I had not agreed to pay for these shoes, which caused her to get very upset with me over the phone because my ex had told her that we would cover the shoes and that it was our right to pay for these shoes. At this point, I was pretty frustrated and told her that if her son was so worried about his shoes, he shouldn't wear them to school. I told her that this was all just a mistake that happened, but that I wouldn't be paying for a new set of shoes. Since then, the mother has told me that she would seek legal counsel if I didn't pay, but I've decided to stick to my guns on this. So what do you guys think? Am I being the jerk here? So this is a bit of a weird one where I kind of feel like everybody's right. I do think that they should pay for the shoes. $700 is a massive cost. If that was a nice pair of shoes and your kid ruined them, it is logical for you to have to replace them. I also agree that if it's a $700 pair of shoes, the kid shouldn't be wearing them to school in the first place. I agree with the mother, who says that she doesn't feel like she should have to pay for these. The only clear person in the wrong here is the father. The thing he got right was accepting responsibility for his son ruining the shoes. The thing he got wrong was then immediately passing that responsibility to his ex-wife. If you're going to offer this woman payment for the shoes, be prepared to at least pay for half of it. And his reasoning for his ex-wife paying for it is that he pays child support. That doesn't cover random $700 shoes. That covers basic food and expenses. You can't just throw this kind of thing in and assume that child support would cover it. I feel like he really and truly is the jerk of this story. I chose my senior cat over my sister and potentially allowed her to become homeless. I'll preface this by saying my mother treated my sister and I differently. I was always less than while she could do no wrong. She'd always buy my sister everything she wanted while I wore her hand-me-downs. I moved out at 18, worked through college, went non-contact with my mom and low contact with my sister, and our paths diverged greatly from there. I now work in a field that pays well, while she's a stay-at-home mom. I guess I never quite got over this, and while I know the main jerk is my mother and my sister didn't really know any better, I still fester negative feelings towards both of them. I found Tom in a bag as a newborn kitten. He was the only one still alive and I raised him over summer break when I was 13. Then, when school started, my mother got rid of him and I had to go through great and extreme lengths to find out where she dumped him. Took me a week to find him and we've been together ever since. For a few months, Tom hasn't really been okay and has been slowly declining. The vet, however, based on the recent blood panel we did, was confident that he still had some life left to live, and said that he's by far the healthiest geriatric cat she's seen in a while. Thus, we decided to try out surgery to improve his quality of life, even though he's 21. This surgery comes with a price tag. I'm not in the US, but it's around 3 months worth of minimum wage in my country. It won't set us back much, hardly an inconvenience, but we'll be frugal just in case complications happen. He's scheduled for Monday, fingers crossed. Anyway, my sister dropped by on Sunday, which was strange. We haven't spoken since she messaged me a Merry Christmas gift on Facebook. Looks like her husband jumped onto the NFT bandwagon and they're kind of broke and a few months behind on mortgage, and asked if I could help her out with the payments, since they're at risk of becoming homeless. I said, I'm sorry she's going through this, but this is not a good time for me either, and listed the reasons above. I don't want to ever be in a situation where my cat's life depends on $100 that I can't afford to pay. I suggested she get a job and maybe downsize/move in with mother while they get back up on their feet. She did not take this well. She called me names and a crazy cat lady that's going to end up alone, plus some other nice words. I kicked her out. My mother and other relatives have been spamming me through the week for being heartless and caring more about an animal than my own flesh and blood. My husband says I could have just given her some cash to avoid the drama. And he's right, I could have. This is why I feel like I might be the jerk. In the end, the main reason I chose not to help is due to my childhood baggage. Well, it does kind of sound like you're addressing the issue yourself here right at the end. That the real reason you said no is due to what went on when you were a kid, which you also stated yourself isn't really your sister's fault. Now, I do agree that she has the option of just getting a job, and it sounds like she would rather just ask for the money than have to actually do some work. At the end of the day, I don't know what their situation is. It was stated that she's a stay-at-home mom, so with a couple rugrats running around, maybe she needs to be there and can't be getting a job right now. And you did say that technically you could give her the money. Now, with all of this in consideration, I still don't really think you're being a jerk here. I understand your feelings and why you did what you did. There's a lot of negative emotions there. But sometimes overcoming those negative emotions and doing something to help someone who you feel has slighted you can actually really turn that relationship around. This action of helping her out could have ended up bringing you guys closer than ever. But I guess now we may never know. I don't know. It's hard for me to definitively call this poster a jerk. What do you guys think? My neighbor sues me to get free money and epically fails, costing him $9,600. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. So it's been about 4 years since this happened. I was 18 at the time, working at a security company. There were constant call-offs and no-shows. Have no idea why. But being so young and naive, I was constantly working 16-hour shifts and not coming home until 8 a.m. I also lived with my father at the time. The time frame of this was around the 4th of July. I finally had the day off and my best friend was back in town for vacation. We decided to get together and chip in on some good old American fireworks. To be fair, I have nothing but bad experiences with fireworks, so I had no idea how this time would be any different. We got home with the fireworks and we laid them all out on the floor. Sparklers, bottle rockets, cakes, and Roman candles. I say, why don't we mess around with some sparklers since it's not dark yet? Great idea! We go into my backyard where it hasn't rained in well over 2 months and is extremely dry. You see the problem here. One of the little sparkies from mine or my friend's sparkler made contact with the ground and made 2 small fires that quickly spread to a larger area. I ran as fast as I could to grab the garden hose and quickly started spraying down the fire. It was no use. It was spreading faster than I could spray it. I handed my friend the hose and called 911. What felt like hours was only 4 minutes, and the fire was spreading to the neighbor's fence. The neighbor came outside and they were fairly calm to grab their hose and spray down the fence along with the dead grass in her yard. The fire department shows up finally, and I tell my friend only one of us needs to get in trouble, so you should leave. He was reluctant to leave because he felt equally responsible, but I convinced him. I didn't want him to get in trouble and have to drop out of college. My neighbor was super chill about the entire situation at first. I told her that we could talk about replacing the fence and get some quotes to repair it. She was just super grateful that everyone was okay. About 2 hours after the fire, the arson/fire investigator came in to question me about the fire. I told him the truth. I said I was in the backyard by myself messing with fireworks and accidentally lit the ground on fire. I'd gotten off that day without being hit by any charges and was commended for being honest. Here's where it starts to go downhill very fast. About a week later, I get a knock at the door from the neighbor. I opened the door and she handed me 2 pieces of paper for me to look at. There was a quote for the fence valued at around $4,000 and an estimate for lawn care valued at $6,000. These were really shady and just typed out on a Microsoft Word document. No logo or company name. She then adds,
I'll also be having you pay my water bill for 3 months because the new yard will need lots of water.
Now, the fence this woman had before was raggedy and falling apart. Her yard, dead grass, weeds everywhere, never mowed it. Now, looking at this paper, she wants a mahogany fence and a brand new backyard with flowers and trimmed hedges. I said, I need to get an estimate myself. This doesn't feel right. She says,
remember, you agreed to replace my fence, and a real man keeps his promises.
I shut the door and called my dad to tell him about what just happened. And he flipped the heck out and told me, son, don't you give that woman a single dime. He gives me the number to his handyman and tells me to take care of it. The next day, I had the guy come out for an estimate and the neighbor ran outside flailing her arms.
I did not give you permission to get an estimate on my fence.
Technically, it separates the property line, so it's both of our fences. She calls the cops on me for having a contractor and they ultimately can't do a single thing because I'm on my property. He quickly finishes the estimate off at $1,200. I also knew a guy who did lawn care from my time working at the grocery store. He estimated the lawn reseeding while she was away from the house to be about $800. After I get these estimates, I give copies to the woman and she's having none of it.
I don't know these people. I don't want them near my house. They're probably really crappy contractors.
I said, no, I know them personally. They're really nice people and do great work. She shut the door in my face and I went on my way. I ended up working a 16-hour shift that night and got home at 8 a.m. And this woman comes knocking on my door at 9 a.m. and demanded that I speak to her. I explained I would really love to do this, but I just got home and I have to be back at work in less than 5 hours. I need to sleep. She goes,
what kind of lazy person sleeps in until 2 p.m.?
At this point, I had lost it and just told her, you can either accept my $2,000 for my quotes or bite me and get nothing. She stood there for a while with her mouth gaped open, but she accepted my offer and planned to meet down at the notary the next morning. I spent that night after I got off work writing a contract and gathering the $2,000 in cash. The next morning I wake up and grab this contract to meet down at the notary. I was thrilled to finally be done with this situation and never have to speak to her again. I waited for her for over 3 hours and she didn't show up. I get a call from her saying,
I'm sorry, the $2,000 isn't enough. I'm having my guys start work on this project and you'll be paying me full price.
Oh, really? After that, I didn't say a single word to her, and I watched for months as these guys turned her backyard into an oasis, complete with a small pond, brand new sod and flowers, the whole 9 yards. Come to find out, she had planned to remodel these things for a long time and was just waiting for the opportunity to go through with it. Also in this time, she used her remodel funds to go on a trip to Hawaii. You know how I found out about this? She was bragging about it on the neighborhood Facebook group and didn't know I was in it. I have a different Facebook name than my real name. Now for the revenge. So 4 months later after the fire and all the remodels, I get served papers to go to court for $10,300. At 18 years old, I'm having to hire a lawyer to work my case. When we finally do get into court, I lay everything out. The quotes, being harassed multiple times, not showing up after agreeing to a deal, not wanting me to get my own quotes, required by law by the way, and her bragging about screwing me out of the money. And I have proof of all of this. The judge looked at her and said, "Ma'am, with all due respect, you are out of your mind. Not only did this young man tell you the truth of what happened, he offered to pay you more than he was supposed to. Your lawn was already dead before the fire occurred. Therefore, he's only responsible for the fence of $1,200. I will also deduct from this his lawyer fees of $800. So I burned this woman's fence down and all I'm having to give her is $400? Cool." She took a huge financial loss from this. Not sure how much the Hawaii trip cost her, but she was in serious debt. She ended up having to sell the house because of it and moved into a smaller house. Haven't heard anything from her since. Can I really be the jerk when she did it to herself? Yeah, this one's a safe not the jerk. Good on this kid for managing to keep his head while having to deal with what seemed to be a very frustrating woman. And he played it the perfect way too, literally letting her dig her own grave. In this case, all he had to do for revenge was just sit back and watch. I'm not sure in what universe this woman thinks that this kid has to pay for a full brand new backyard. Like the poster said, she had all the amenities going on back there. All she had before was dead grass and weeds. It's not up to him to buy her all of that new stuff. The judge even ruled he wasn't responsible for the lawn and only the fence. Him offering to pay for the lawn was already going above and beyond, and she felt the need to try and milk it out an extra 10 times what it was worth? I really don't feel bad about this woman at all from the repercussions of having to sell her house and such. She had it coming. Entitled mother makes a huge scene because her daughter wants the dress that my daughter's trying on. I took my daughter homecoming shopping at our local mall. She was in a dressing room and I had several dresses hanging outside the door. The shop was very busy and full. I was standing outside her door waiting for her to come out and show me the dress she was currently trying on when some entitled mother came over. The entitled mother started looking through the dresses we had chosen hanging on the door. I said, "Excuse me, but those are dresses my daughter's about to try on." The entitled mother says, "I know, but my daughter really wanted to try on this black one, and you have the only one in her size." I told the entitled mother that she could have it after my daughter tried it on if she decided it wasn't what she wanted. Entitled mother huffed and walked away. My daughter came out in a red dress that she really liked, but still wanted to try on the rest. So I held on to the red dress. Entitled mother comes back and asks if she's done with the dress yet. I say no, she's trying it on now. Entitled mother gets huffy and tells my daughter to hurry up. Then she eyes the red dress in my hand and says, "What about that one?" I told her it was a contender, and she goes off complaining that we've taken all the dresses in her daughter's size. Then she notices another dress we have hanging on the door and completely loses it, screaming about how that was the dress her daughter had come for and we were ruining her first formal shopping trip. At this point, I was livid. I told her to go away, that it was also my daughter's first formal and she should have come earlier. She walked over to her daughter's fitting room and started loudly telling her that the rude people had every dress in her daughter's size. We had 6 dresses. My daughter tried them all on, but was having trouble deciding which out of the 3 this woman wanted was her favorite, all while listening to this woman make a scene. I told my daughter to get dressed and hung the 3 dresses she definitely didn't want on the go-back rack, keeping the 3 dresses the woman wanted in my arms. Entitled mother came over as my daughter came out of the fitting room and very nastily asked her if she'd made a decision. My daughter was almost in tears. I made up my mind at that moment. "We've decided to take all 3, I said smugly. That way she can decide in the comfort of her own home with no pressure. She tried to tell the cashier that it wasn't fair, but the cashier just told her that I had every right to buy as many dresses as I wanted. After we got home, my daughter put on a fashion show for me, her dad, and siblings with all 3 dresses. She chose the red one. Best money I ever spent. I don't think it was a jerk move at all. You know what, original poster? I completely agree with you. It's not your fault she got there after you guys and you guys were trying on similar dresses in a similar size. But her sense of entitlement only ultimately screwed over her daughter, who wanted one of those dresses at least. The daughter wasn't really mentioned in all of this and sounds like she wasn't really the one making a big fuss about it. If entitled mom had just been a decent human being and understanding of the situation, she would have had the option to try on those dresses. Excellent move from from our original poster though. I really love this one. I found out this guy was gonna rob my little brother, so I made sure I got to him first. So let's start with some background. I'm an ex-drug addict and a bad one at that. I was doing heavy drugs already by the time I was 16. So I'm from a not so small town that has a bad gang and drug population. I have two little half-brothers who live a town over, and their city is considered very nice. My little brothers are the complete opposite of me. They get good grades, are in sports, and are very popular. And we're only a year apart. We didn't get along very well back in the day, but I would have died for them. I love my brothers. So when I was 16, I had and still have to this day two good friends that were from the city my brothers were from. They tended to use drugs more recreationally, and they didn't like me when I was strung out. Well, one night they went out to make a purchase from a new dealer in town. We'll call him Shady Dealer. That night, when my friends were walking home from Shady Dealer's house, a group of dudes rolled up on them and robbed them and beat them up. Bad enough that one of them lost eyesight in his left eye. There was nothing I could do at that point, as I had no proof that it was Shady Dealer who set them up, so nothing was done. It's now 1 year later, and I've been bare-knuckle boxing for 3 years, with a very well-known Mexican gang in order to fund my drug habit. At this point, I'm well connected. I've kept a close eye on Shady Dealer. I hear that Shady Dealer is planning a robbery very similar to what happened to my friends a year prior. Only this time, the mark is my little brother and his best friend, who I did know liked to use recreationally. This setup was on a Friday night. I found out on Thursday. Remember that I've been keeping track of this guy. I know everything about his crappy home life. I know his dad is a construction worker and is gone at 4 a.m. and is home around 3, if he doesn't go to his favorite bar, that is. His mom is out of the picture. I know why, but I'm not going to get into that. And that's it. Nobody else lives there. So at 4:15 a.m., I jumped into his backyard with my balaclava and a couple of weapons and walked right into the back door into his room, beat him, robbed him, and left him zip-tied to the toilet. Aftermath, I heard that he had over 6 broken bones, and after he got out of the hospital, his dad kicked him out. I'm not entirely sure why. I know he likes his drugs, and no other family would take him in out of fear, and friends know what he likes to do to other junkies. So he ended up homeless, and now he's in prison for, of all things, armed robbery. So yeah, don't even think about hurting my family. This one got pretty serious. I never like when violence comes into play. Typically, I prefer to try and find another solution when at all possible, but it seems like we're in kind of a different situation here regarding the people involved. Maybe it does sound like this guy got what was coming to him. I just find it hard to cheer for our original poster in a situation like this. I completely understand. He was going to hurt your brother and you made sure you took care of it. I can't really fault you for that. At the end of the day, in this story, our poster is still the hero. You almost kill someone we respect and put the blame on us? That is not acceptable. So setting the scene for my story, it's the early 90s, and I was in my 20s, working as an electrician with my best friend. We were known as the Hawkeye, me, and the Trapper/Honeycut team of our crew, and we kept everyone on the job site laughing and in good spirits, even in the worst of times. We were working new construction of an elementary school and had been on site since the very beginning. We were 2 weeks away from punch-out. That's where construction is complete and inspections are done looking for any flaws or corrections that need to be made. Anywho, the superintendent over the whole construction site was a major jerkface, and had been since day one. He was new and wanting to make a name for himself. It was his first time running a job and he made several mistakes and always blamed others. Remember me mentioning the worst of times? He constantly cut corners to save on cost, which would turn around and bite him later on. He had gotten several good hands fired. He would run good contractors off the job and bring in friends to replace them. The drywallers and painters were a couple of examples, and I heard that he had half the plumbers run off and replaced with his crew as well. He was a total jerk to us electricians as well, wanting us to work overtime but not willing to pay for it. He was really wanting to keep us behind so that he could charge the company fines. Our small company finally brought in a couple of extra hands, which set him off even more because we were starting to catch up. By the time Christmas rolled around, we were ahead of everyone else, and as mentioned, the job was near punch-out status. 2 weeks before Christmas, my friend's car, since I was his roommate, I carpooled with him as I didn't have my own transportation, lost its rear end, and we, my best friend and I, missed 2 days of work repairing it. The jerkface superintendent saw this as an opportunity and told our job foreman to have us fired. if not, run us off the job site. He tried to kick us off property himself, but had no legal means. Tried to have our foreman run us off, citing we were unsafe and a distraction keeping others from getting work done. His argument was dismissed since, as I mentioned, we were ahead of everyone else. It was the day before Christmas Eve, our last day before we would be off for the holiday. He knew our supervisor who was visiting that day was deathly afraid of snakes. Earlier that day, a small rattlesnake had been found hibernating beneath a porta potty that had been moved and killed. Gotta love Texas. The jerk-faced superintendent had brought a cooler full of beer for his crew for when the day ended. Well, our supervisor made his rounds, inspecting our work and talking to our foreman, and since we were his last stop, was ready to leave and start his holiday. The superintendent told him to have a beer and pointed out the cooler. Our supervisor opened the lid to the cooler and had a heart attack. Literally, the dead snake was inside. When the EMTs finally cleared him, the supervisor was telling him that he saw me and my friend at the cooler earlier that day and blamed us. Of course, we had been under the foreman's nose all day, in which half of it was with the supervisor, and our supervisor was aware of Jerkface's tricks, so he did not give in to the demands of having us fired. Now time for the revenge. My friend and I did not take kindly to our supervisor being harmed, nor to the blame being pinned on us. Do to us what you will, but do not harm those in whom we have respect. Like I said, it was the last day of work before the Christmas holiday. We had Christmas Eve and Christmas off. After work, my friend and I drove to a bait shop and picked up a gallon of Catfish Charlie. For those who don't know, catfish are really attracted to foul odors, and Catfish Charlie was one of the stinkiest baits used for catfish. I mean, one whiff will turn your stomach and you'll turn green. A cast iron stomach is what you need just to not lose your lunch. We drove back to the school and around back to where the air handler unit was. For those who don't know, the air handler is the main environmental unit of commercial buildings, AC and heating. We open up the main intake duct and dump the whole bucket of the Catfish Charlie and close the duct back up. For good measure, we had also added about 1.5 pints of water and stirred into a nice thinner paste so that it would not quickly dry out. I did learn that even though I was a long-time smoker, I could hold my breath for a full 1.5 minutes. And my friend 2 minutes, probably due to him being ex-military. Neither of us could see for about 10 minutes due to the tears, and it was a miracle we didn't lose the contents of our stomachs. Even in Texas, winters can get cold, including on the coast, and this was in a particularly cold winter, staying in the 20s and teens Fahrenheit. It even snowed on Christmas, not enough to write home about, which maybe happens once every 10 to 15 years. Remember, this was Wednesday, and like I said, we had Christmas Eve and Christmas off, and then the weekend. 4 full days for that stink bait to stew in the running heat system. Come to find out later that the jerkface superintendent and his cronies had forgotten to lower the main thermostat before leaving for the long winter holiday weekend. The thermostat is normally lowered to 50 degrees Fahrenheit when closed during cold weather, and raised to 82 degrees Fahrenheit when closed during warmer. Yeah, it was left at 75 degrees Fahrenheit that whole weekend. It's Monday and my friend and I pull up to quite the scene that morning. Martians on all fours seem to be littering the grounds of the school, projectile vomiting spewing everywhere. There was an ambulance and 3 fire trucks on the scene with firemen in full rubbers, including respirators running around everywhere. All of the doors and the windows of the school were open with giant fans venting the buildings. The air was putrid, and we turned green upon exiting the vehicle. "Oh my God," was all I could say. What the hell happened here? Our boss was sitting on the hood of his car next to ours, his breakfast fully painting the ground. The jerk-faced superintendent and a couple of his guys were in the back of the ambulance on oxygen, as they had taken the full brunt upon opening the building. Okay, let's tally the damage. The smell had permeated everything, and I mean everything. The school, besides the cafeteria, was fully carpeted. The drop ceilings were of the fiberglass type, as well as the insulation, so they absorbed the smell. The walls that weren't cinder block were papered and not painted. Since the inner ductwork was the insulated type on the inside, all of that had to be replaced as well. Needless to say, tens of millions of dollars in damage. Also, a fence had to be erected to prevent such a thing from ever occurring again. Come to find out, the superintendent had skipped on the insurance and pocketed the money. So, needless to say, it fell on his company to cover all of the costs. All of his underhanded dealings came to light in the end as well. Needless to say, he lost his job and was arrested, losing his contractor's license forever. Our boss never said anything, but I'm thinking due to the way he grinned at us after that day, that he had his suspicions that it was us. But he never turned us in, and did put in for us to get a big raise. Since the smell didn't permeate any of our stuff and our jobs were complete anyway, the plumbers, electricians, and pipe fitters were spared from ever having to enter that mess. Yeah, nearly 30 years. I guess the statute of limitations are well up, so I can safely tell the story. I want to admit that I do feel ashamed for doing it. Being young and dumb and all is also a great excuse, but a good contractor service went bankrupt, and a lot of jobs were lost in the end. And from what I hear, the school still has a foul odor, even today. Well, about 18 years ago, from what I heard. Yeah, we expected to stink up the place, but didn't expect such a result. So, was I the jerk? Wow, this one really got out of your control, I think. It seems like it was just kind of a funny prank that you were doing on a jerk, and it seemed justified at the time. But given what the end result was, whether it was something that you intended to happen or not, I am gonna have to call you the jerk on this one. It's kind of funny, but it's also very unfortunate for the people that actually had to deal with this awful situation. Not only was the jerk punished, which I'm totally for by the way, but a lot of other people who didn't have anything to do with it. Yeah. Just unfortunate. Karen spanks me because she thinks I spanked her son. She could lose her kids for that, so she paid me $500 instead. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. First, some backstory on the situation. Half of my family is Italian and half of my family isn't. On the Italian side, which the entitled mother is from, spanking is pretty standard. But on the other one, we will take you out, so no one does it anymore. I was about 16 at the time and living with my grandparents. They were having a little get-together, but the guests were all told to stay out of my room because I wasn't feeling well at all. Plus, the cat was in there, and with people going in and out of the house, we didn't want him to escape. There was even a sign on my door that read, "Please do not disturb, cat inside." Since I was sick, my body wasn't holding its temperature right, so I was in a sports bra and shorts, but my robe was right next to me. I was just laying back on my bed trying to get a little bit of homework done before I passed out again. I told my grandmother to bring some food in when it was ready, and that was that. I heard a little knock on the door. It was super light, so I thought maybe it was my grandmother bringing me something to eat, not wanting to wake me up. I throw the robe on and go, "Yeah, come in." Next thing I knew, it's a little gremlin coming in, chocolate all over his face and hands. Of course, he walked right in and started touching the stuff, not closing the door. Luckily, I had grabbed the cat because Grandma is a slow walker. "Wow, cool room," entitled kid said, and tried to pick up one of my notebooks, one that was really special to me. I took it off the table before he could get fudge on it. "I'm sorry, bud, but you gotta go back to your mom. You're not supposed to be in here, I'm sick." The kid ignored me, still touching stuff. "I'm bored though, and you have cool stuff. I got my shots last night." I shake my head and point to the door. "It's rude to go into someone's room when they say no. Please go out there and play with the other kids. I'm sick," I said, firmly this time. And he whines but leaves, slamming my door. I shake my head and this time go back to my desk, where all my really fragile art supplies are. I cleared a spot so I'd be able to eat in a couple of minutes. I start getting really hot, so I take off the robe. Next thing I know, my door flies open and I barely manage to grab my cat. The entitled mother stood there, red-faced and fuming.
My son said you spanked him.
I didn't even touch him once. It should also be known that this entitled mother is known in the family for having a habit of swatting kids if they'd step out of line. Something my mom had corrected with threats more than once while I was growing up. It usually ended in her calling me spoiled. She then stopped and looked at me, gasping and covering her eyes as if she'd never seen another woman not fully clothed before.
Young lady, that is so indecent. There are children in this house. Put on clothes.
I stare at her dumbfounded and shake my head. Look, entitled mother, I never hit your kid. I would never do that. And I'm sick. He shouldn't be coming in here and neither should you. What followed was her going on for about 5 minutes or so about how I was the one in the wrong and blah blah blah. At this point, my stomach is starting to churn a little bit from the stress. I have a stress disorder, and being sick, I know I'm not going to keep it down for long. I tell her she has to leave now. I'm sick, the cat is scratching the hell out of me at this point, being as I was indecent and trying to keep him from escaping, and she had no right to be in there in the first place. She grabbed me and, as if I was 6, started trying to spank me, even managing to get my shorts down. This woman actually smacked me. So I did what most people would do. I screamed for my grandfather. "Grandpa, entitled mother's hitting me!" While I slam her back, her hip slams into my bed frame and I run into the hallway, slamming the door and holding the door closed behind me while she wails like a banshee. Now I'm indecent in front of guests, but also pretty important, they can all see like 6 or 7 really bright red marks on my thighs and butt. My grandfather was never one to curse profusely, but seeing his half-naked granddaughter with obvious marks from an assault standing in the hallway, trying not to have a panic attack, he lost it. He called her so many things, I lost count. A few others came into the room screaming at her as well. I'm crying at that point, not because she hurt me, but because I was humiliated, trying to just get back into my room and hide from the world forever. Little did I know, it got worse. She started yelling, saying my grandparents spoiled me and that I hit her kid first. By this point, her own husband was yelling, "No, she didn't," right in her face. But she didn't care. She took my desk and floored everything, breaking a lot of projects I worked really hard on, and all my supplies spilled everywhere, all into the carpet and everything. She was quickly kicked out of the house. Her son admitted to lying, but he felt really bad for what happened. He was crying, hugging me, saying he was super sorry, and basically being as apologetic as a kid really gets. We never talked to her again after that, except to get the money for my stuff. She refused, but my mom told her she would file charges for attacking a minor since she pulled my pants down in order to hit me. She would lose her kids if we won the case, which she did a year later anyway, and they live with their much better father. So she gave me roughly $500 out of court, and I got to call her a B-word to her face. I just can't believe what a jerk she was. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one. I don't understand how, as a guest in someone else's home, you think it's okay to go into a room that literally has a sign on it saying "Do not enter" and assault someone's child. And apparently there was a history of this. Original poster said that this woman got put in her place years ago because of stuff like this. To play devil's advocate, I understand that in that moment she thought that this young girl had hit her kid. But I still feel like maybe we went off the deep end a little too quickly here. Either way, I find this to be a happy ending because at least they never saw this woman again. I feel like that's probably about the best you could ask for in this situation. Some jerk thought it was funny to be indecent on the road repeatedly, so I had to take care of him. Not my story, but an old trucker who doesn't have Reddit. We got stuck at sea on a rescue boat yesterday and passed the time by sharing stories. So this story is as told by him. I was a fuel trucker. I had a regular daily route in my state and would start just after 4 p.m. So I was refilling the area's gas stations roughly after evening rush. This had me driving late into the night. In this one small town, it seemed like every night around 10, this jerk in a tank top would pass me on the road while pleasuring himself. He always seemed to find me, pull up next to me on the highway, and try to get my attention before zipping off down the road. One week, I saw him 3 nights in a row at the same red light. It was the summer, so he had his roof down each time. Then I got an idea. A wonderful idea. When I got home, I gathered what I needed for my teenage son's room and slept better than I had in weeks. The next night, as I pull through that small, rural, deep south town, sure enough, Mr. Tank Top pulled up next to me, whacking it and giggling, and as he looked up at me, noticed that my window was down for the first time. Then he saw the paintball gun. My son was avid at the sport and had saved for a long time to buy this thing and modify it out for team/league stuff. My point is, it could shoot very, very fast. And I lit him up. The inside of his car, him, and his lap were covered in green paint in about 3 seconds. I don't know how long it took him to get in gear and run that red light, but I was empty before he was out of the intersection. Never saw him again. That jerk dealt with. Kudos to you, good sir, for providing a public service. I'm really glad our original poster decided to share this story with everyone. As completely unpleasant as our antagonist's actions are in this story, our protagonist found a very, very good way of dealing with it, I feel. It seems it has at least stopped him from repeating the actions, which is all anyone wanted. Entitled kid thinks he has rights, but gets proven wrong. I work for a towing company, handling releases of impounded vehicles. This is the first entitled parents issue I've had, but I'd love to share it. We had a vehicle get impounded with some serious damage due to drunk driving. The owner of the vehicle was not the registered owner. It sat in our yard until about 3 days ago when we got payment and released said vehicle. Entitled kid showed up on Monday hoping to release said vehicle. Showed up with nothing but $10. What he didn't know is that since it was impounded by the police, he needed to get a release certificate. And since it had been in our yard for a month, the price was definitely more than $10. $10 doesn't even cover the administration fee. Entitled kid waited patiently in line waiting for me to finish with the previous customers. So I didn't expect much from him in regards to temperament and attitude. When I was done with the previous customers, he came up and said he was there to get his vehicle. I pulled up the vehicle information I gave him and realized he wasn't the registered owner. And by law, we can't release it to anyone who isn't the registered owner. And I told him so. This is the conversation that follows. It's my car. I'm the only one that drives it, so it's mine. That may be the case, but you're not the registered owner, and we need the registered owner to sign our paperwork. But it's my car. I want it. I can pay for it. Well, judging by the fact you're holding $10 in your hand, you can't in fact pay for it. $10 is more than enough. Give me my car. The current outstanding balance owing on the vehicle is $468. Your $10 does not cover that. Entitled kid looks at me with a state of confusion on his face and proceeds to leave. I figured that was the end of it. I was so wrong. Not even an hour later, I received a call from entitled mother, the actual registered owner of the vehicle. We went through the whole vehicle make, model, color. My son is telling me $10 won't cover the costs. That would be because the current amount owing is $468. How is it that much? It's been here for over a month now. We have storage fees for vehicles impounded for drunk driving and various other things. It wasn't there for a month. And what does drunk driving have to do with any of this? It's been here for over a month. We picked up the vehicle on February 27th. The driver of the vehicle was pulled over after hitting a telephone pole and blew over the legal limit, hence why the vehicle was impounded for drunk driving. How has my son been getting around for a month if the vehicle was there? Huh? Answer me that! I have no idea, seeing as I don't know you or him. I do know that the vehicle has been here for over a month though, seeing as I processed the paperwork when it came in. You're lying! You're lying! I'll be down there soon! Okay, just so you know, if you'd like the vehicle to be released to you, you need to pick up a release certificate from the SGI issuer. Thanks. Click. I should add now that we always have a police officer on the property. Many threats have been uttered and violence is a major thing here. Entitled mother and entitled kid show up with some fancy looking guy and I get the paperwork ready before they even make it through the door. Turns out, fancy looking guy is her lawyer. This is my lawyer. He needs to see the paperwork right now. Okay, sounds fair. After what seems like forever was probably only 15 minutes, the lawyer pulls entitled mother aside and tries to quietly tell her that there's nothing he can do. You'd better do something or you're fired. I can't do anything. All the paperwork is here and maybe I could have done something at the time this all happened, but it's been well over a month now and my hands are tied. At this point, the cop is closer to the counter, listening in, waiting for any point he has to jump in. Why was the vehicle impounded again? It hit a telephone pole, caused major damage, and drunk driving. Is that the truth? No, she's lying. I'm only 16. Where would I even drink? Told you, he couldn't have been drinking. Lower your price and give us the car. At this point, our police officer steps in. Hello, miss. I'm just curious as to who will be towing the vehicle home. Entitled kid will be driving it home. Sorry, no. With the amount of damage done to that car, it's best that it's not driven. And considering entitled kid is 16 and was caught drinking and driving, he has no license. Entitled kid wasn't drinking and driving. He still has his license. Excuse me, entitled kid, can I see your license? I don't have it on me. It's okay. I'll just find you on my nifty little laptop here. The police officer proceeds to pull up entitled kid's file and bam, no license. Has to go through the whole driving course again. Has to pay a fine for drinking and driving and everything. He turns his laptop so entitled mother and lawyer can see it. Entitled mother, without another word, pays the outstanding balance on the vehicle, pays us extra money to tow it back to her house, and they all leave together. The second that door closed though, oh boy. Judging by what I could hear through the door and what I saw on the cameras, entitled mother was not happy that entitled kid made her look stupid, and that entitled kid would be paying her back for years over this. Her lawyer said he wouldn't be working for her further and got in his car and left. As they got closer to the vehicle though, entitled mother smacked entitled kid on the back of the head, and judging by what happened next, he was left to find his own ride home, seeing as she left without him. Just a family of jerks. I do feel like this happens a lot of the time though. Some jerk kid comes in with their jerk parents and hasn't been honest with their parents about what the situation really is. As a result, the jerk parent goes off on a rampage that ends up just making them look foolish. And the only one who really suffers the fallout in the end is the jerk kid. It seems like our original poster handled this exactly as they should have. They remained calm, dealt with the situation, provided information to prove what they were saying, and everything was able to move forward as a result. At least in this case, once proven wrong, the entitled mother was able to at least recognize it, shut her mouth, did what needed to be done, and got out of there. I'm sure she was completely embarrassed and thus didn't want to say anything else. But sometimes these types of people, when embarrassed, just double down on it, which never ends well for them. No one in my family likes my nephew, and I told him to his face. This involves me, 25-year-old male, my sister, Diana, 21-year-old female, and her son, Darius, 10-year-old male. I get along with Diana fine. I won't pretend I like Darius. I think he's an entitled brat who has gotten away with crap far too many times. I don't think Diana has ever reprimanded him. And every time the little jerk acts up, Diana makes excuses for him. He's already been suspended from school for stealing. He's a bully to all of his cousins, and I know for a fact that no one in my family likes him at all. Both of my parents can't stand him. My mother, a woman who could find the love in her heart to babysit a honey badger, refuses to watch Darius at all because of his behavior. My father will take all of the grandkids out to fish every few months, except for Darius, because he's too tempted to throw him out into the lake and drive off. His words, not mine. On Monday, I got a call from my sister who panicked because she got called into work. Darius was out of school and her babysitter wasn't available. No one else in the family would watch Darius, so I told her to drop him off and I would watch him. It was a nightmare. Darius was mad he had to spend his day off at my place. He refused to do anything I offered, made a mess in my bathroom, harassed my dog, and had a tantrum because I wouldn't let him use my work computer to play games. By lunchtime, I was frustrated beyond all belief. I made him mac and cheese and he demanded that I take him to Wendy's. He refused to eat and eventually dumped his bowl of food on my floor. At that, I just kinda lost it. I didn't yell or get aggressive at all. I just sighed and asked him if he realized that everyone in the family literally despised him. I explained that he was at my house because Grandma and Grandpa can't stand him, and in fact refused to let him come into their house because he acts like a little jerk. I won't lie, I got pretty brutal. He started crying and locked himself in my bathroom until he came out and sat and watched TV till my sister came and got him. I told her what happened and we got into a massive argument as well. She called me cruel and I told her that she's to blame and he would have learned eventually. My family is split on this. My dad thinks
The little jerk deserved it.
while my siblings have mixed opinions. My mother's told me she's staying out of this, but if I feel the need to apologize, do it and move on. What do you guys think? Was I the jerk? Alright, so for this one, I do feel like she said with the family being split down the middle that it could kind of go either way. There are some times where a little tough love is needed, and it sounds like this kid had not gotten any at any time and was just horrible to other people around him in general. He didn't understand how he was making others feel because no one had ever made him feel that way. Maybe now that he's experienced it firsthand, he'll understand how he's making others feel and hopefully just back off a little bit, or at least just stop being a little hellion. At the same time, it is a kid, and normally you're not supposed to be mean to children. But like I said, tough love. It's for his benefit in the end, right? Like, he can't continue to act like this forever. Someone has to address it. I don't know. I'm with our original poster on this one. I wasn't there. Maybe they did come down a little too hard. Maybe it could have been done in a little bit of a gentler way. But I think it was something that needed to be heard. I moved out of my apartment after my parents forced me to let my brother live there. So my parents pay for this apartment, but they didn't get it specifically for me. When I got into university, my parents purchased an apartment close to the campus, so that I could live my way without having to deal with other people. I'm not social, and I could best be described as either misanthropist or curmudgeonly. It was great for 2 years, and I came out of my shell a little. I met other people like me and discovered that, unlike high school, university isn't hell. I even met a guy. We both work at the campus store. My little brother graduated last year and got into the same school. Rather than stay in dorms, he convinced my parents to let him move in with me. Well, they own it, so I had no say. I lasted 1 semester. Since he had an off-campus residence, my apartment became party central. I asked my parents to make him stop after talking to him didn't work. They said, loosen up. I think they know how to change my personality. I talked to the university and was able to snag a rare single room in the mature student dorm. I don't have a lot of stuff, so when we went home for Christmas, I took what was really important to me. My boyfriend, first one ever by the way, look at me all social now, cleaned out my room and moved my stuff to student housing for me. When we drove back after New Year's, I dropped off my brother and then went to my new place. It isn't perfect, but it's pretty sweet. My parents called me and asked where I was. My brother had let them know that I wasn't in the apartment. I told them where I was and why I was there. They were upset that they spent all that money to help me and I didn't appreciate it. I said I did, until they stuck me with my brother. Without me there, he's having a blast. Good for him. He's also missing a lot of classes and has been fined for noise complaints by the condo board, but that's not my problem. My parents are asking me to please move back in because my brother's in danger of being put on academic probation. I asked if I was allowed to bar him from having parties and stuff. He was part of the conversation and was upset that I was asking to be put in charge of him. My parents said he was allowed some freedom and that as his big sister, I should look out for him and not let him fail. I thanked them for the opportunity, but declined. And he recently had a party that the cops had to shut down. My parents are considering selling the apartment, but it's kind of a crappy market right now, I guess. I feel bad that they might lose money after doing something so awesome for me. And I feel bad that my idiot brother might have to take time off school to calm down. But I don't think I'm the jerk. They all do, though. I don't think our original poster here is a jerk at all. It seemed like the parents didn't understand the value of that space to them. Having to share it with the brother and not having any say in what's going on in the apartment and random people coming over and things like that, I wouldn't feel comfortable either. Maybe a little bit of a heads up that you were moving out would have been good, but at the end of the day, you're entitled to do what you want. If this is what's going to make you happy and let you be successful in school, go for it. Do what you need to do. It's not your responsibility to look out for your brother. He's a big boy now, and these are the decisions he's choosing to make. I say you leave that to him. Entitled mother thinks she earned her daughter's inheritance because she raised her. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. When I used to work warehouse, there had been this lady who constantly talked bad about her oldest child. She stated how much she disliked her and that she couldn't wait to kick her out. She had already started packing her daughter's things while she was still in high school and 17, since she wanted her to leave when she was exactly 18. This woman was a piece of work. One day, I overhear her talking to our coworker how she was going to get all this new stuff. Since she was going to get money from her daughter's inheritance from her daughter was getting it from her dad's side. Lady was divorced. When the coworker asked entitled mother how much her daughter was planning to give her, she said that it was all hers, that she was going to demand it all from her daughter or else she was going to kick her out. How she had given up so much of her life taking care of this ungrateful child, and that she deserved it all since she raised her. A week or two later, her coworker asked her if she'd gotten all her new stuff, and she just complains about how when she demanded the money, her daughter pretty much just told her to screw off, and she went to live with her friend. That she couldn't believe her daughter did that to her and that she was glad she was out of the house. She even went as far as to state that to be petty, she stole her daughter's old phone and planned on using it. Her daughter was planning on selling it, but the entitled mother refused to give it back, and the daughter didn't want to fight her about it anymore and let her have it. The thing is that it's locked, and entitled mother couldn't get it to work. I never did find out if she managed, since she quit because she didn't feel appreciated at her job. She was a bad worker. I don't think I've ever heard anyone be such a jerk to their child. Yeah, this woman really does sound like a piece of work. I mean, I understand that a lot of effort goes into raising a child, but typically a lot of love does too, and it sounds like that was missing in this equation. I don't know where she gets the audacity to think that she's gonna get all of this inheritance, especially now that her daughter has access to this money and can finally be free of her jerk mother. Some entitled mother physically assaulted me and the vice principal tried to expel me because the teachers were obviously lying. This story is from about 4 years ago when I was in 6th grade, in a school essentially full of rich entitled kids, where I was bullied a lot. There are a lot of characters in this story, so I'll do my best to try and keep it straight. We have entitled mother, entitled kid, vice principal, coach, teacher, nurse, admissions officer, mom, and finally me. So for the backstory, I'd been going to school with this kid for 7 years at this point, and for a few years had been on the same bus as him, despite living on opposite sides of town. So I was always stuck on the bus for over an hour, and didn't get home until like 5 p.m. Because of how late I would get home and the fact that my bus stop was over a half a mile from where we were living at my grandparents' at the time since we were doing construction on our house, my parents got me a cheap, crappy cell phone in the 4th grade. So me and this kid had never liked each other. We were both smart, but me far more so, humble brag, which made him kind of jealous. I explicitly remember that in 4th grade on the last day of school, we all had to pass around a paper on which we'd write something nice about the person whose paper it was. He wrote on mine, "Second smartest in class after me." Anyway, one day riding home on the bus in 5th grade, he tried to steal my phone. So we fought, and I ended up punching him in the face. I had some behavioral problems as a kid due to my ADHD, so I got in fights and hit a lot. Suffice to say, from that point on, he and his mom hated me. She'd even tried to get me kicked off the bus, but failed since the other kid said he'd attacked me first and that there was literally no way for my parents to pick me up, as they both had work. Anyway, diving into the main story. So this whole thing started off in gym class one day. We were playing a game which involved tagging one another. Note that this was arranged by the coach. And I chase after this kid and tag him, then run off. I think nothing of it, as that's what all the kids were doing. He starts chasing after me, but like I said, perfectly normal. Then the next day in science, the teacher's teaching us about planetary orbits, about how they both orbit the sun and spin themselves. And she had a few kids come in near her, with her being the sun, and spin really quick and move around her quickly, to symbolize planets like Mercury and Venus. I was one of those kids and I got pretty dizzy. So dizzy, in fact, that when heading back to my table, I fell over and scraped up my leg against a table, and also falling onto this kid, completely by accident. I help him up, apologize profusely, and head back to my seat. Once again, I think nothing of it. Boy, was I wrong. The next week, I'm sitting in social studies, one of the few days I was staying in school, as some of the bullying I was receiving was so bad I would just skip school or make myself vomit so I wouldn't have to go. And over the PA system, they say, "Original poster, please step out of class." Now, this is very weird, since in this school they never said, "step out of class." They always said, "go to XYZ's office," or "go to XYZ place." But whatever, I stepped outside my classroom and just waited. I was standing there for like 20 minutes when this crazed looking 30-year-old woman comes up to me and grabs my arm and digs her long nails into it. Ladies and gents, this is our entitled mother. While she wasn't your standard Karen, me, who was a chubby 11-year-old at the time, was terrified. She starts screaming at me,
"Don't ever touch my son! Don't you ever touch my son! You dirty little brat! Don't ever touch my son!"
She carried on like this for about 5 minutes, all the while with me terrified since I had no clue what was going on. She then stops and the vice principal walks over and pulls me into her office, and entitled mother follows. So I'm sitting in the vice principal's office, very confused as to why I'm there, and she starts off with the classic principal line of, "Do you know why you're here?" I, of course, respond no, since I had no clue why I was there. And then entitled mother starts yelling at me,
"Stop lying!"
Vice principal does nothing to stop her, but then says to me, "You're here because you hit entitled kid." I respond, "When?" I never touched him. Vice principal then tells me, entitled kid says that you tackled him against the wall during gym on XYZ date when we played the game, and that you punched him in the face. Additionally, he says that on XYZ day in science, you knocked him to the ground, jumped on top of him, and started clawing at his eyes, and that you hurt him so badly he had to go to the nurse. I responded by telling her that's completely untrue, but the vice principal hated me. One day, my bully locked me outside in the pouring rain, and when she let me back in, she said that I should be suspended for being outside, even after she saw the camera footage. So when I tell her that I didn't do it, she says that she doesn't think she can trust me over entitled kid, him being a paragon of truth or something, and calls up my mom. My mom, who mind you was at work just trying to finish up so she could get home to her infant child, takes my back and says that I did nothing wrong because I didn't do anything, and says that before vice principal rushes to judgment, she first needs to ask my science teacher and coach. Entitled mother rejects this out of hand since, after all,
my precious little entitled kid could never be lying.
Hey lady, I've got a surprise for you. Both teachers come in, which I saw since I was stuck in her office for the rest of the day, and they both say in front of entitled mother, vice principal, and I, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Original poster didn't do anything. Vice principal lets me go home, but tells me that there will be a meeting tomorrow with my mom and I, as well as entitled mother. The next day, I have a headache, so I go to the nurse. Now, I don't know how it works in most schools, but in our school, when you went to the nurse, you needed to sign in, and the date was written down. I tell the nurse who liked me the story and asked her if she could check her records. She pulls out the forms and says that entitled kid hadn't been there in over 2 months. He never went. Me, excited by this new information, asks the nurse to come speak to the vice principal later with me and my mom, and the nurse agrees. Later that day, entitled mother, mom, and I walk into the vice principal's office and sit down. Entitled mother starts her rant about how I'm a terrible child who's abusing her son and should not be allowed in the school. My mom gets up and tells her to her face that she's full of crap, that all the teachers said I did nothing wrong, and that maybe they should ask the nurse about what happened. Vice principal calls up the nurse and asks her about this, and nurse tells the truth. The entitled kid had never been there. My mom sits down thinking that maybe we would be allowed to leave because, you know, I'm innocent. But oh no, dear reader, that isn't what happened. Vice principal turns to me and my mom and says to our faces, dead serious, maybe the teachers could be lying. That's right. These teachers who had steady, secure jobs at this school and had worked there happily for a year at the highest paying school in the area would sacrifice their jobs for a little kid who they didn't really like that much. Entitled mother smugly yells out,
"Of course they're lying. They all just want an entitled kid to get in trouble."
My mom, fed up with this and the severe bullying I've been going through, pulls me up, tells the vice principal we're leaving, and heads to the administration officer's office. She then pulls me out of the school for next year. Joke's on the vice principal though, she got fired. Guess that's what happens to jerks. Now, again, to play devil's advocate here, I'm sure it's difficult for principals and teachers to deal with these situations with kids. It's always a story of he said, she said, right? And let's be honest, kids aren't always the most honest. But I feel like once the entitled kid has been proven to be lying in several instances, to turn around and say that all of your staff members are lying just to get him in trouble seems like borderline paranoia to me. Like really, the worst person in this story is by far the vice principal. Kids will be kids, they don't get along sometimes. It kind of is what it is in some instances. But it's the vice principal's job to address these situations and try and resolve them. And I feel like the way that she handled this just seemed completely one-sided. Clearly, other people acknowledged that maybe she wasn't that good at this job since she got fired shortly after. At least no one else has to deal with this anymore. This lady tried to ruin my Christmas holiday, so I called immigration on her. Let's start with some backstory. I used to work for a computer repair company that did warranty work for several of the major PC brands. Dell, IBM, HP, etc. We'd receive our jobs around 8 a.m., contact customers 3 times between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. for guaranteed same-day service. Then at 5 p.m., we close out our calls for the day. At each call, we document that an attempt was made, and if there's any questions about it, they can pull up our phone records. It's Christmas Eve and I'm working as usual. In my bucket are 2 calls for the day. 9 a.m. comes and I contact the first with no problem, and they want service on the 28th due to going out of town. No big deal, we've got 5 days to complete the call. Second customer doesn't answer, so I leave a voicemail and go about my day. 11:30, I call again and leave the same voicemail. Then again at 1 to the same result. Great, my day is now free and I can go visit my family. I drive north from my home city where we're routed from for work about 40 miles away. Around 4:45, I get a call from my supervisor. Let's call him Steve. And he's basically screaming at me that I had made no attempts to contact the second customer, and that she's escalated the call to Dell. Pretty sure that was the PC maker. That's a very serious thing to have happen with our company at the time. 3 unresolved escalations results in immediate termination. By the time I got off the phone with Steve, it's 5 p.m. So I call the customer again. Hi, this is me with company name. I'm calling about your Dell laptop. I see by our records that you're having issues with getting no Wi-Fi signal. I'd like to set up a time on the 26th to come repair that for you. When would be a good time?
Are you kidding me? I've been waiting home all day for you to get your butt here, and you won't come until the 26th? I need this fixed tonight. I signed up for internet as a Christmas gift for my kids. You've ruined Christmas for them, you little jerk. You need to get out here now and fix this piece of crap.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but it's after 5. It's Christmas Eve and I'm already with my family. She hangs up. I stare at the phone for a second before telling my family what's happened. Not 2 minutes later, Steve calls me again, that there's a second escalation against me and that I need to leave to get this call resolved tonight. I call the customer and after feeling the smug radiate off of her over the phone, I tell her that I'm 2.5 hours away and will be there as soon as I can be. Obviously, I'm getting peeved by the turn of events. Fast forward and I arrive at her house, which was 64 miles from my home city, roughly 2 hours later, only to be greeted in the driveway by this self-absorbed witch. She stands there smiling smugly at me and saying next time I'll call customers like I'm supposed to. I point out to her that I have phone records proving that I had, and that I'd like to get this over with quickly so I can salvage what I can of the holiday. She leads me into the house where I'm confronted by a very large group of Mexican people, at least 15 to 20 of them, several of which reek heavily of pot. She sets me up in the dining room and I proceed to replace the motherboard and wireless card, all while listening to every person in the room telling about how they crossed the border and laughing at how easy it was and how they work under the table for various people. I finish and boot up the laptop, fix all the BIOS settings and go into Windows. To my surprise, there's no Wi-Fi detected. I check all the settings and as a good measure, I pull out my phone and do a search on there. Nothing. I ask the lady where the router is set up so I can check to see if it's broadcasting. And I swear I can't make this up.
Oh, they're coming on the 26th to set all that up.
They're coming on the 26th to set all that up. As calmly as I could, I packed everything up and told her good night. Now, I know what you're thinking. Where's the revenge in this story? Across the street was a gas station, where I pulled in to a point that I could see her house, but they'd have a hard time seeing me. Next, I made a call to ICE and to the local police department, telling them that I had just done a service call to a drug den that was housing numerous illegal immigrants and at least a dozen children. You've got to think of the children, right? I set up my dash cam and waited the 15 minutes for the first wave of blue lights to appear. I sat there watching at least 15 men being hauled out in handcuffs with a gleam in my eye. The best part? The witch was standing out in the middle of her yard, screaming at the top of her lungs that it was Christmas, and how dare they take her family away. I think she got wise to me when I pulled away after the cops and ICE left, but I didn't care. I countered the escalations the next day with proof of my calling and never heard from her again. So what do you guys think? Was I a jerk? See, this one is a little more difficult, I feel. I don't know, I could kind of get on either side. At the end of the day, we don't know these people that he screwed over. They might have had horrible lives where they were and were happy to finally be in the US. To then lose everything just because of some petty interaction between this woman and our original poster really would seem kind of sad. Now, our original poster said they were kind of bragging about it and making it into a joke, and were also doing drugs at the time. So I understand maybe having the impulse to call immigration. However, this really seems like it was done out of pettiness more than anything else, and that's where my problem lies. This wasn't done out of concern or anything like that. This was a haha got you moment, and that just feels really dirty to me. My brother's girlfriend says I alienated her at my engagement dinner because she's vegan. I, 24-year-old female, recently got engaged and had an engagement party dinner this past weekend. I'm currently still receiving backlash from this and want to get some outside opinions if I was in the wrong. My fiancé and I both invited our immediate family and close friends to this dinner, about 30 people. The dinner was held at a nice Italian restaurant in my city. Our invites gave our guests the option to choose between the meat option and a fish option for their mains. It's important to note that only people in both mine and my fiance's family that have, I guess, food restrictions are my dad and my stepmom, and they're pescatarian, but a lot of people in our family love seafood, so the fish option was chosen more than the meat. My younger brother, 20-year-old male, contacted me about a week before the dinner to RSVP and asked if he could bring a +1, his new girlfriend. He chose the meat option. Now, my brother dates around a lot and is always bringing new girls around, so I wasn't aware that he was even in a relationship. I told him, sure, and that I can have an extra seat for her. Night of the dinner comes and everyone is having a good time. I met my brother's new girlfriend and she seemed very sweet. When it came time to eat, she pulls one of the waiters aside and loudly asks him, "Is there any vegan options?" The waiter looked confused and said, "We have a fish and a meat option for the mains. I can offer you a salad and some roasted potatoes and other veggies as a substitute if you wish." My brother's girlfriend started to get mouthy with him and said, "Well, what if I don't want a salad, huh? You just assume because I'm vegan I only eat salads? What if I want some pasta? What kind of restaurant is this? This is discrimination." My brother started trying to calm her down, but she started going off on me, saying, "Why would you pick a restaurant that doesn't have vegan options? Many people are vegan nowadays, and it makes me feel alienated that you couldn't even think to accommodate me." I explained to her that the only people that have food restrictions here are pescatarians. So that's what I considered when I chose the restaurant. I didn't even know she was coming until a week ago. The reservation had been booked for a month. She started saying it's embarrassing on my part that I can't accommodate all my guests, and called me small-minded. I told her, "Sorry I didn't think to accommodate you. I'll consider that in the future. Hopefully you'll be around long enough for me to be able to do so." She ended up leaving. My brother walked out with her and has been messaging me that I should apologize to her because I embarrassed her in front of everyone. I told him that she embarrassed herself. My mom's also been on my case to apologize, to be the bigger person and keep the peace. Am I the jerk for making her feel alienated? Alright, so this one I feel is a little more cut and dry. You were not a jerk for making her feel alienated. You didn't know about her dietary preferences, you only found out about her even coming a week prior, and had booked the restaurant almost a month before that. So it is a little bit of a stretch for her to assume that there would have been some change made just for her. Now, that being said, I do think that maybe you were a little bit of a jerk for calling her out about not being around so long. While this is more of a statement towards your brother than it is to her, it was still probably hurtful and just kind of a low blow. It wasn't really necessary. You'd kind of already made your point, I feel, but I also understand that this is your night. It's your engagement party and this is your family and friends. For her to come in and start making some big scene and yelling at you, I can understand the desire to lash out, but it is a situation where maybe you should have been the bigger person. At least for that. I don't blame you about the whole not having vegan food situation. That is what it is, and she should have just accepted what was available to her. You have to understand that when you have dietary restrictions, especially ones that are simply chosen to be implemented and not religious or anything like that not necessarily everywhere is going to be able to accommodate you, and that you are going to run into situations like this. To act the way that this girl acted is nothing short of entitled, and I do agree that she needed to be brought back down to earth. I got the gym teacher sent to prison by exposing his disgusting secret. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. When I was in 5th grade, there was a kid in my class who was just horrible. He threatened me, stole my schoolwork, verbally abused me, and got away with everything because his dad was the school gym teacher and talked the principal out of ever taking any action. This monster brought me to tears daily with his cruelty, and no one could do anything about it. One day at recess, I had to run off and cry somewhere when I heard some girls talking. Evil Kid's dad liked to go into the girls' locker room before gym class, ostensibly to make sure that they weren't goofing off, which was bull since it was the guys who were always late. As you can imagine, this meant he daily saw hundreds of tween girls in various states of undress as they got into their gym uniforms. But there's more. Apparently, he took a particular liking to some girls and made sure they didn't have to work as hard and got the best lockers. What I overheard was one of these favorites talking about getting creepy notes in her locker and not knowing who they were from. I didn't know the actual content of the notes, since all she said was that they were weird and made her uncomfortable. I was a precocious young thing, and my parents had drilled into me that if an adult is making me uncomfortable, I always tell whoever is in charge of them. And if I don't know that person, I tell the police. I followed these instructions and told the principal that Evil Kid's dad was being creepy, giving specific details. This wasn't enough to get him fired or arrested, but it was enough for them to do an investigation. And boy, did they find some stuff. His work computer was full of pictures that he'd taken. 2 weeks after my complaint, we had a new gym teacher, and Evil Kid's family moved away. Years later, I learned that Evil Kid's dad was arrested, and his family moved out of shame. And to think, if his son hadn't bullied me, I never would have overheard those girls, and he never would have been reported. I guess karma has a way of dealing with jerks. Yeah, this is the story that you never want to hear about coming out of a kid's school. I'm not going to dive too much into this one. We all know that this was horrible, and I'm glad that our original poster came forward and said something, so that action could be taken against this gym teacher. Who knows what she saved some of these girls from? This entitled mother demanded I change my movie that I'm watching on my computer to something her son wants to watch. My high school had a day where grades 1 through 8 would come in and see what high school was. From what I was told, parents could join their children. A grade 3 class came into my history class to learn about the prime ministers or something. I was watching How to Train Your Dragon 3 on my computer when the class came in. We have 3 characters: entitled kid, entitled mother, and the teacher. Teacher: okay, everyone find a seat. A lot of kids didn't go to school that day because of the kids, and most kids were doing the presentation. Entitled kid sits next to me. What are you watching? Can I watch? I'm watching How to Train Your Dragon 3. And no, because it's a bit of a scary movie, and it's part of a franchise, so you wouldn't understand what's going on. You're mean. Cool.
You should let my son watch or put on something he likes, because that movie isn't age appropriate, and entitled kid doesn't like it.
No, the presentation is starting soon and it's my computer. I'm allowed to watch whatever I want. I unpaused the movie and unfortunately a scary scene came on, and entitled kid sees this and screams.
What the hell?
Don't swear in front of your kid.
Put Frozen on instead of that garbage.
As a huge fan of How to Train Your Dragon, I was a bit triggered. I'm leaving. I was going down to a room with computers and quiet.
No, put on Frozen so my son can watch it.
No, it's my computer. Mr. Teacher, can I go down to room 103? Yeah, sure.
Your student was watching a horrible movie.
What was it? How to Train Your Dragon. It's not bad. I told entitled kid that he couldn't watch it.
Your student should put on Frozen as an apology.
The presentation is starting.
Fine, but you should punish your student for watching such a horrible movie.
No, original poster is a good student, and she warned entitled kid about the movie.
Well, my son didn't like it.
The door is right over there, and if you don't stop talking garbage about my student, I will force you to leave. Thanks, Mr. Teacher. Leaves. I had to deal with another kid while I was eating my lunch, but their good parent told them to leave me alone. I guess not all kids and parents are jerks. Yeah, I don't understand how parents have such a sense of entitlement when it comes to their kids sometimes. Like everything in the world just belongs to them and revolves around them. Every other person should bow and give in to this kid's whim. We're all here to make him happy, apparently. I'd be willing to bet mom just didn't want to have to look after him herself and wanted to just plop him in front of a screen so that he'd be busy for a while. And if that's the case, bring the kid a tablet. Don't bug other people. Today was the day I got fired from a job I didn't even have. This is the story of how I got fired today. First, my actual job is driving a truck. Today, I went about 200 miles to drop off a tank and pick up another one. I was told it would be several hours before my return tank was clean and ready. I came down with a cold yesterday and slept for an extra hour, so I didn't make breakfast or lunch for today because I was tired and a bit late. I decided to leave my trailer there and go find a place I could get some food and cold medicine. Well, I found a place. I pulled in and parked pretty far away, as I take up 4 spots and wouldn't want someone to complain. As I went in, I noticed a bus from an old folks' home outside. I found my way to the pantry section to look at what food was available, and was kindly asked a question by one of the nice people from the nursing home. I spent a good 30 minutes talking to them and helping them out, cause I had nothing better to do anyway. They were also very clearly happy to have someone to talk to. I should probably mention that I didn't have a cart, because I was only getting a few things. I think it's also important to note that I was dressed like a hobo because I work with chemicals, and even though the ones that I handle are relatively safe, I have a 2-year-old at home and throw out anything that had any sort of contact before going into the house. So yeah, I look like a hobo when I work. A well-dressed lady walked up to me and basically thrust her crap pile of papers into my chest and said,
"Follow me to my car."
I was a bit confused, and unfortunately for me, I wasn't prepared and dropped half of her stuff. Before I said anything, I bent down to try to pick it up when she got a bit nasty.
"Sorry, but hurry up. Hurry up. I've got to be somewhere."
She did say sorry first, so being nice, I picked up her stuff and tried to hand it back to her, but she was already walking away and told me to come like I was a dog. I got pretty annoyed, so I put her stuff on a shelf and walked away myself. A few minutes later, as I got to the register, I hear the clicking of heels and turned just in time to have her walk up to me and ask where her stuff was. I told her I left it on the shelf, and she looked completely confused and asked why. I responded that she could probably have asked politely if she needed help, and she lost it.
"You're fired."
She looked at who must have been the manager.
"He's fired. You hear me?"
The manager just said, looking kind of embarrassed. And she must have picked up on it by then, but kept staring at her to continue. "He doesn't work here."
"And he won't ever,"
she responded as she walked away to get her stuff. I paid for my stuff, and the poor cashier was half trying to make sure I was okay and half trying not to laugh. She told me the lady was from corporate and is supposed to check up on stores. I really wish I would have said something witty, but I was half in shock at what happened and how poorly this professional woman handled herself. Update. I wasn't going to call corporate because I find this situation almost amusing, but some of you pointed out that people have to work under her and she likely treats them this way. So I did. They took some info and I was promised a call back so far. Update 2. Got a call back from a guy on their customer experience team. He was really cool, offered me a bunch of free stuff, which I don't really want, and told me they know without a doubt who was where, but because of her position, his boss would be handling it. He took my exact receipt number to check with the cashier, and he said he would get some things together and his boss would be calling me to follow up. I got the distinct impression that this guy is in a similar position to the woman the complaint is about, and all he could do was send it up the ladder. Update 3. The VP of customer service called me today. He was extremely down to earth and apologetic. He understood that I didn't want anything, and my concern was for how this woman would treat employees, and how she would likely get away with it. He agreed, but had already refunded my purchase to my card before calling me. He described the woman to me, and I confirmed it was her. He said that she does in fact work for corporate, but is part of a team of contracted consultants. His first reaction would be to fire her, but it would be more complicated than that with their contract. He said these particular consultants have nothing to do with customer service, and should have zero control and little contact with employees in store except department managers. This particular company's contract is reviewed quarterly, and he's already asked her company to remove her from the next round of renewals, which is set for July. He's also already sent out emails but has scheduled a meeting with their team leader to make it clear that they are contractors for a specific function, and store employees do not work for them. He doesn't know what action her company will take against her, if any. Maybe it's not the best result, but I was glad to get an honest answer. I honestly wasn't going to even complain if not for you guys pointing out how store employees could be treated. So yeah, she fired me. And not only did I not work there, she was a contractor and couldn't fire me even if I did. This woman sounds like she needs a little bit of a reality check. The fact that she wasn't even embarrassed by that interaction really says something about her personality. God forbid, you're in a position where, sure, you're a higher up or contractor or whatever, There's an employee there that you believe to be under you. You need help with something. You unkindly ask for their help, and this is the result. You think a human being would just apologize and be completely embarrassed by this situation. But this woman's over here still trying to save face. I don't know. This feels like a genuine day-to-day interaction. Standard Karen moment. And it sounds like customer service really did try to do what they can to follow up, which I have to give them credit for because a lot of companies would just write something like this off and not want to deal with it. I was accused of profiling a teenage boy after I'm pretty sure he was selling drugs out of my house. Last weekend, my wife and I left town to attend a wedding. We left our 17-year-old son at home and permitted him to have a small party. We told him not to allow too many people and not to let it get out of control. On the night of the party, we checked our security cameras a few times, and everything looked fine, with no more than 40 kids. However, on the drive home, my wife received a call from a parent of a girl who had been at the party. The girl admitted that at the party she had done cocaine and had said many others at the party had as well. She didn't say who had supplied the cocaine. My wife spent the rest of the drive looking through the footage from that night, specifically to see who came inside. She recognized almost all the kids and didn't see anyone that looked older than a high schooler. She did spot one boy that she was immediately suspicious of. He's a longtime friend of our son, but had been caught by another boy's parents last year smoking weed in their backyard. He's been known for getting in trouble in the past. His dad is currently in prison and his family is also poor. So it would make sense if he was selling drugs to try to make money for himself. We only have 2 cameras inside the house, so they only catch so much. But it was clear the boy spent the majority of the night in the kitchen and seemed to be approached by multiple people, including the girl who admitted to doing coke. When we got home, we told our son about the phone call. After a long discussion, he confessed that he knew some people were doing cocaine, but said he wasn't interested in doing any himself and that he felt uncomfortable with it, but didn't know how to tell them to stop. When we asked who had brought the coke, he said he didn't know. When we asked specifically about the boy we suspected, he denied it but seemed to be lying. My wife contacted many of the parents of the kids, as well as the high school to let them know that this might be an issue. When the school asked, we told them we suspected the boy, but it was unclear. Apparently, the school had a meeting with the boy about our allegations and they called his guardian, his great-grandma. Yesterday, she came to our home and asked us why we had singled out her grandson and wanted to know if we had any evidence that he'd been selling drugs. We told her that we only suspected. She became angry at us for pointing the finger without evidence and for contacting the school at all. She accused us of profiling him based on his family and background. My wife doesn't think we did anything wrong, but I'm starting to have my doubts. The school is conducting interviews with kids that were at the party. Apparently, the boy is in danger of being kicked off the soccer team and possibly expelled depending on the outcome. So, am I the jerk? We were only trying to provide the best information we could to the parents and school to protect their kids, as we obviously feel responsible for allowing this to happen in our home. So I'm gonna have to go with not the jerk on this one. You took the evidence that you had available and came to the reasonable conclusion that you had at that time of who you suspected it might be. I don't think that this had anything to do with his history or anything like that. It was based on the footage that you were seeing, and you weren't outright accusing him of it. You had stated that it was only a suspicion. What comes after that really comes down to the kid. If he was guilty, then they will probably find evidence and he'll be penalized as a result. If he wasn't guilty, then eventually the whole thing would just blow over. I really don't feel like you did something wrong here. But I also understand great-grandma wanting to defend her grandson. She feels that he's gotten the finger pointed at him and he's not being given a fair chance. Everyone thinks that their kid can do no wrong, and it might be possible that he's doing all this and she has no idea about any of it. So I can't really fault her for stepping up for him. This is the one where you've done what you can, and you gotta let the chips fall as they may. I had to ban my girlfriend from bringing my friend's ex over to my house. Recently, a friend of mine, Anthony, and his wife Carly went through a pretty nasty divorce. They had a child together about 1.5 years old, and things just weren't working between them. There were some issues with attraction. He felt it was getting monotonous, he was interested in pursuing other relationships, and ended up finding a spark with a then coworker who's now his girlfriend. And the whole thing was just a mess. She did end up getting child support and alimony, but there were issues with how his family structures their trust, which meant she left a lot on the table. Still, even now, it's not like she's actually below the poverty line or anything, so it's whatever. I didn't think we would be seeing much more of her since she's my friend's wife, who we weren't particularly close with, and there's no real reason why we would need to have any more contact than him. given that she was his wife. However, my girlfriend has been getting together and commiserating with her for some reason, and now their conflict, which I have deliberately kept away from, is now bleeding into my life too. My girlfriend keeps bringing up how unfair what my friend did was, how he's barely paying anything while they struggle, etc, etc. Despite me saying that it's none of our business repeatedly. She's constantly passive-aggressive towards Anthony, even though he hasn't done anything to her. She's even brought Carly over while me and Anthony were hanging out, saying she's her friend and she's allowed to have guests. As you can guess, this has led to some heated arguments. She's glad to know he's having fun eating edibles and playing video games with children. Yes, she even referred to me and our other friend as children to our face. We're both 22. While she's exhausted taking care of their child alone, and things like that. Now, keep in mind, this is my house. My parents gifted me this condo when I graduated, and I pay all the utility bills. I'm letting my girlfriend stay here because her roommate didn't want to renew the lease. She's trying to frame this like I'm not letting her see her friends, which is absurd. She's clearly 100% in the wrong here, right? Am I the jerk, or is she for trying to bring this woman into our home? Yeah, this feels like one of those situations where you just don't want to be involved, which our original poster has stated he didn't want to be. And it sounds like the girlfriend is only becoming more friendly with the ex because all of this stuff is going on. I don't know, maybe it's just my point of view, but this really just seems antagonistic. Why do you need to get involved in other people's dirty laundry? It seems like she's literally trying to force you to take the ex's side over someone who's been your friend for a long time, which obviously you're not really gonna do. Whatever happened between them aside, you clearly value your friendship with this person. What happened between him and his ex has nothing to do with you. You should be allowed to continue your friendship with him without feeling harassed. Same as she saying she should be allowed to have her friendship with the ex. Except in her case, it feels like she's really only just doing it to start problems. I don't know. Again, my opinion on this one, just stay out of it. But she's not giving you that option, so I don't know. Your call, buddy. I had to tell my dad I refuse to go anywhere with him if his wife is there. I'm a 38-year-old female, and my parents got divorced about 14 years ago after my father had been having an affair with his current wife, Brenda, for about 5 years. Not only this, but he was absolutely horrible to my mom in the process, and really screwed her over. I was angry with him and went no contact with him for 4 years after. My grandfather on my dad's side before he passed away told me to try and make amends with my father. As I loved him very much, I agreed to try. I slowly tried to build a relationship back with him, and things have been okay, but strained, because trusting him has been hard. I also don't like Brenda. I did try, but we have nothing in common. She's a very gossipy woman who talks trash about so many people, and I'm more interested in world events and science and psychology. I lived nearby until about 3 years ago, and made an effort to see them once a month. I've now moved a 4-hour drive away, and can only get up once or twice a year to visit. On one visit a couple years back, Brenda started talking about my half-sister, saying if she'd raised her, she wouldn't have had all the problems she did, and that my mom was wrong in how she managed her mental illness. Without going into much detail, my sister has bipolar disorder, and was very hard to manage in her childhood. And after years of trying to get her help and her running away, my mom agreed to let her go live with other family as she had asked. It was either that or she was going to live in a group home most likely. I snapped at Brenda saying she wasn't there and she has no idea what she was talking about. I was little, but I remember all the pain my family was going through and how hard it was for my mom to let her go. Since then, every time we've gone out together, Brenda refused to talk to me. She won't respond if I say hello. She stares at her phone and talks to my dad as if I'm not there. I asked him to say something about it because it's rude and uncomfortable, and he just says he can't tell her what to do, and we need to work it out. I told him if that's the case, I'll only visit with him when she's not around. He says I'm being dramatic, and if Brenda isn't invited, he won't come either. I told him if he won't leave her behind, then he won't be seeing me anymore either. I love him, but I'm not going to let her disrespect me anymore. He's making me feel like I'm being a jerk because I want to see him, but I don't want to let her treat me this way. Well, I'll save you the trouble there. You're not being the jerk. It's totally understandable to want to speak up in a situation like that. It was a highly emotional time for you and your family that this woman is handling with quite a bit of indifference, it seems. I would have put her in her place too. And Dad is clearly taking the new wife's side here. You're saying that you're going to ignore her and not want to spend any time with her, and he suddenly gets mad, but seems to have no issue with her treating you the exact same way, right in front of you. At least you have the courtesy of not wanting to be around her and not disrespecting her to her face. Dad really needs to just grow a pair and sit down and talk to her and let her know that she can't be treating his children this way. She needs to make an effort to get along too, and that maybe it's best for her not to go running her mouth about family situations she wasn't around when they occurred. Entitled mother says I'm too black to raise my baby? Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. I'm a very old woman now, but when I was young, I was straight up tough and didn't let anyone bully me or try to take advantage of me in a vulnerable state. However, there was one instance where I was caught off guard, as the situation was incredibly unbelievable. As a backstory, I was 21 at the time and had just delivered a beautiful baby girl. It was a very difficult delivery which had me in the hospital for 2 months after my daughter was born. She went home a month before me. During that time, my husband and I broke up and my mother had to kick him out of our apartment, since he was an entitled jerk. But that's another story altogether. I was finally released from the hospital on the condition that I do not allow myself to get too upset, as my stitches were not totally healed. And I had very bad anxiety attacks which would shoot up my blood pressure and I would end up in intensive care. So this is my story. I had just been released from the hospital and my mom had brought me home and set me up in the living room so I could watch TV and she could talk with me while I'm resting. It was very important that I keep as still as possible and rest, not letting anything bother me, as any distress could cause my blood pressure to rise and cause a rupture of my stitches due to the complications of my pregnancy. I couldn't even hold my newborn baby, as it would just be too much physical stress. She was sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. No one was supposed to visit me until I had rested a few days so I could be strong enough to handle company. Enter my sister-in-law and mother-in-law. My mother informed all of the family that I couldn't receive visitors the day I got home, but of course there was a knock at the door. In enters my sister-in-law and mother-in-law, gifts in hand, demanding that my mother let them see the baby. I was laying on the sofa by the bassinet, but was completely ignored. My mother questioned why they showed up today and not waited until the weekend when I was able to handle company, and they said they didn't get her message and sister-in-law wanted to see her new niece. She was only in town for a couple of days and wouldn't be around by the weekend. They practically yanked my daughter out of her crib, exclaiming how much she looked like her father, and were very impressed that she was very fair-skinned and had a shock of red hair as well. All they could talk about was how light she was. They shoved the gift at me to open, which my mother intercepted. She also tried to keep me calm, as I was getting very upset that they were passing my child around like she was a doll. While I'm not in any way considered dark-skinned, I'm also not considered overly fair. However, my sister-in-law was so fair that she could pass for white, blonde hair and all. My husband's family is notoriously color-struck, i.e. they favor light-skinned members of the family. Since my sister-in-law was very fair, she felt she was far better than anyone else, and that was how she raised her daughter. These facts led to this exchange. "She's so beautiful. She looks just like me." "What?" "She would be better off with someone who resembles her." "What the hell are you talking about? You're just not the right person to raise the baby."
"The baby would be better off with your sister-in-law. She knows how to raise a baby the proper way."
Me getting angrier every moment. "Please put my baby back in the bassinet. You want your baby to have a wonderful life. She would have a great life with me." My mother and I didn't like where this was going, and my mom went to take the baby from the arms of my sister-in-law to put her back in the bassinet. But my sister-in-law held the baby tighter and exclaimed, "You don't deserve the baby. You're too dark to care for the baby. I'll take her back home with me. You can visit her now and then if you like." My blood boils and I nearly jump off the couch to go after this woman, when I get a very sharp pain in my stomach and fell back on the couch. My mom, "Put the baby down right now or I will whip your butt." At that, my mother snatched the baby from my sister-in-law's grip and put the baby back in her bassinet. She then grabbed my sister-in-law and escorted her out of our apartment. All while my sister-in-law was cursing her out and calling me all kinds of names and that the baby probably wasn't mine, which didn't make any sense. At this point, my mother-in-law was very quiet and followed my sister-in-law out. I would like to say that that was the last I saw of her, but it wasn't. She contacted my little girl when she was much older, around 9, and informed her that she would have had a much better life if she was with my sister-in-law. My kid already knew about the incident from my mother and just politely ignored my sister-in-law's remarks. My kid's a mother herself now and does talk to my sister-in-law from time to time, as well as her mostly absent dad. But they were not in her life much, and she went from a very happy, well-adjusted kid to a wonderful adult. My sister-in-law has spoken to me once or twice during that time. Not apologizing, but now trying to get me and her brother back together. We've been divorced for over 20 years. This delusional lady really is just a jerk. Yeah, this one is a little bit unbelievable to hear, that someone could actually say those words to someone. That has to be one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard. I really do wish there was some kind of happy ending here though. From the context, it seems like our original poster really just had to sit there and take all of this. And there seem to have been no actual repercussions to this sister-in-law's horrible mentality. I'd like to think that maybe out there in the universe, karma's cooking something up. I definitely feel that this is a case it would need to address. Lady, you see me all dressed up for St. Paddy's Day. Do you really think I work here? So this just happened. At lunch a few minutes ago, had to run by a local sporting goods store. Apparently, every new sport my kid does requires new clothes and accessories. So I'm perusing volleyball knee pads, whoever even knew there was a thing for 9-year-olds, got to my phone googling trying to figure out what size I need, and this woman walks up next to me, snorts, and says, "Well, that's not very professional." I ignored her, as in this area there's a thing called the Seattle Freeze, where we don't talk to random people in stores, as they might be either A, crazy, or B, want to start a conversation with you. Well, she proceeds to stick her hand in front of my phone screen and say,
Didn't you hear what I said?
I looked up and, big surprise, middle-aged woman wearing spandex that's screaming, "Ow, ow, ow, stop, I give up," a $200 workout jacket over it, and a foul look on her face. I said, "Please don't do that. What do you want anyway?" She starts in about my outfit and how unprofessional it is. In honor of St. Paddy's, I'm wearing a green flannel shirt, a t-shirt with shamrocks that says "Conserve Water, Drink Beer" on it, jeans, and a hat with a green Triforce on it. I look down and say, okay, but who cares? My boss doesn't care, so why does it matter? You should really mind your business. And I resume back to my phone, trying to understand why a 4'6" kid wears a medium, but a 4'7" kid wears a small. She puts her hand on my phone and tries to knock it out of my hands. Lady, I appreciate your concern, but I'm really not interested in your opinion. Now get your hands away from me before you lose them. Well, she shrieks.
What did you just say to me? You can't talk to me that way. Get me a manager now.
At that point, I got where she was coming from and quickly said, I see your problem. I don't work here. Well, she's beyond listening. She's got a whole rant going. Store manager comes up to see what's going on. I totally ignore her, and before she can say anything, ask, "Hey bro, do you know anything about kids' volleyball pads?" I'm lost here, and this chick freaking out isn't helping. You could literally watch the gears in her head churn. She finally realized that I didn't work there and turned purple in the face. Wasn't even red. Purple. I thought she was gonna die. I asked, "Lady, you okay?" She squeaked and ran out of the store. Told the manager what happened, he laughed and gave me 10% off. Sometimes an encounter with a jerk can pay out. Yes, the classic Karen I don't work here. This one I feel was a little more obvious from the outset that this person clearly didn't work here given what they were wearing. I really don't understand how people come to these assumptions sometimes. But hey, at least in this case, our original poster played it cool and even saved a few bucks on his way out of the store as a result. So maybe this lady actually did him a favor. For a long time, I was my grandmother's dedicated personal shopper. I'm tall for a human, 6'5" and a little, bright red hair, translucent complexion. Got there pretty quick too. I was 6 feet by the time I was 13. This is slightly odd because my grandmother's from Tokyo. She's an amazing woman, hospitable and gentle and kind, the best grandmother a guy could ask for. As an example, she heard I wanted to see this new show coming out on Cartoon Network when I was a kid, and made sure I was at her place and awake for the 11 p.m. premiere of Samurai Jack. hours past my bedtime. She's retired and lives in a complex with a bunch of other little old Asian ladies, the tallest coming up to my shoulder. They're all friends and frenemies, and I stay the hell away from their internal politics. You never want to mess with that, trust me. After I got to a certain height, my grandmother habitually took me shopping at one or another of the Japanese markets dotted around Southern California. Suddenly, I'm a status symbol, an asset, and a huge help. She'd get 3 of her friends and we'd all pile into one or another of their vehicles, chattering amiably the whole time in a mix of broken English and Japanese, get to the market, and everyone but me grabbed a cart. We'd meander aisle to aisle and I'd be tasked to get the things on the top shelf, the ripest fruit out of reach, and the heavy bags of rice that they didn't want to lift. We'd split into 2 groups at the checkout and my grandmother would beam smiles all around the entire time. The lady that inevitably helps us always knew her already. "Oh, Momoyo-chan, you brought him again? Did he help you well?" "Of course, he's a good boy, always getting the things up high." This continued for years upon years, until I moved out, and the memo must have gone out that I was now a free agent, because to this day I get asked by random little old Asian ladies to get stuff off the top shelf. At this point, it's so ingrained in me, and it seems that every other time I go to any supermarket I get asked, that I often don't even wait for them to approach me. If I see someone staring at an item out of reach, I'll ask if they want me to get it for them. Maybe it's just my calling. I feel like I'm missing the jerk implication in this one. Is sweet little Asian grandma supposed to be the jerk because she's proud of her tall grandson and wants him to get the things up high? I don't think that's being a jerk. I do love the use of the word frenemies in this instance though, that there's all these skeevy moves being played by these little Asian ladies in this retirement home. I don't know. Doesn't seem like there's any jerks in this story to me. And I certainly won't complain to just have a nice wholesome one thrown in the middle. Entitled mother demands I hire her kid, and she actually turns out to be one of my best employees. A little context before I start. I used to be a supervisor for public parks in charge of lifeguard staff and pool maintenance. Every year in the spring, we held an exam/tryout/interview, let's call it a test, to fill the available positions. I was in charge of 8 pools, 15 to 20 splash pads, and 8 to 10 kiddie pools. Every year, we see many more candidates than positions, so not everybody that passed was hired. But I personally called everyone, pass or fail, to tell them their results and offer to put them on our reserve list in case we needed their services later in the year. That year, we had about 115 candidates that passed the test out of 250. We had 11 positions to fill. 11. Not per park. Total. I had to make a lot of phone calls and spoke to a lot of disappointed kids. And this brings us to our story. Hiring season is about to end. Summer is about to start, teams are being built, 250 plus calls have been made, and I'm very happy with the candidates that accepted the jobs. And I have a long list of future lifeguards I can call if they're needed. About 60 wanted to be on the call list. About a week after we're done with the hiring and can start focusing on training the staff, I get a phone call from entitled mother, and right after she introduces herself.
"Incompetent kid told me she wasn't hired? Why wasn't she hired? She has all the qualifications and you told her she passed your test."
Well, yes, she did pass, but we had candidates that did better than her and they were called first. All the positions were filled before I got to incompetent kid, unfortunately. However, when I spoke to her, I offered to keep her name on the reserve list if she wanted, and she did. Usually—
"So what is she supposed to do all summer? Sit down and wait for your call?"
As I explained to incompetent kid, we usually have to call in between 20 to 30 from the reserve list to do injuries, heat exhaustion, or other issues with staff. So if we get to her name, she'll be invited to join the team.
"Then you have to put her first on the list so she gets called."
Unfortunately, our policy states that we call the candidates from the highest score to the low—
"But incompetent kid really wants to be a lifeguard and she deserves a job. You have to hire her."
I can tell you she passed and she's on my list. No more, unfortunately. I wouldn't want to give false hope to anyone, and incompetent kid understood that when I spoke to her.
"But I'm telling you, she wants to work. You'll have to hire incompetent kid. You'll see."
If it comes to— click. If the passing grade was 70 out of 100, incompetent kid would have gotten a 72. She barely had the skills, but wouldn't be a danger to herself and wouldn't kill anyone. But she was very low on the list. A few days go by and I don't think about the situation anymore. One of my lifeguards just graduated and found a job, so I start calling the reserve list to replace personnel. Usual procedure. The day after I fill the position, I have a message on my voicemail.
this is Incompetent Kid's mom. I know you hired new staff because it was her BFF you called first. Why won't you hire Incompetent Kid? I told you before you would have to hire her. I'm friends with the mayor. I'm calling him right now.
I tell my director about the call and ask if it's okay if I handle the call if it ever comes. The mayor was a very liked person in my city and participated in activities with the population. I had given him swimming lessons for a couple of years before, so I knew him well and wasn't stressed at all. I'd been working as a supervisor since before his election, but in total, I had already been a city employee for almost 20 years. Later that day, the mayor calls. It's transferred to me and we exchange pleasantries for a little bit, and then the topic of hiring procedures comes up. I don't want you to hire anyone or force your hand, but Entitled Mother's call made me curious and I'd like to know how candidates are selected. I'd be glad to explain, but it would take a while. If you don't have the time, I can send your office the documentation that is sent to the candidates prior to the test, as well as our written policy concerning the selection process. No, I'm in no rush. I would like you to explain it to me, just so I'm sure that I understand well. I spend the next 20 to 30 minutes explaining the whole testing process, the grading procedure, and hiring of candidates in reserve list. When all is done, so once everyone's been assessed, we call the stronger candidates to make sure we keep our facilities as safe as possible. As we should. Just out of curiosity, where is Incompetent Kid on the list? I would never tell anyone, but at this point, I'm just curious. Well, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with telling you Entitled Kid's rank on our reserve list, but I can tell you she had a 72 on the test. Then I hope we don't need to call her this year. I never smiled as much as I did that day and report to my director. I breathe easy and it's over. 2 months pass by. Great season for my staff. Almost all of our uni grads find jobs in their field. Horrible for me. All 90s have been hired or refused the position when called. All high 80s, low 80s or empties, high 70s hired, mid 70s same, low 70s, 3 candidates left. 2 weeks left to peak season. I know I have the staff I need for fall and winter. 8 days left. I get a call from one of the head lifeguards at one of the pools. A teammate twisted an ankle, can't finish the season. I have to call Incompetent Kid. Incompetent Kid is hired, assigned to a team, and on day 1 struggles on the first training rescue. Comes in 90 minutes late on her second day. On day 3, Incompetent Kid has to jump in to rescue a 5-year-old kid, but almost drowns herself and has to be rescued by the head lifeguard. He saved the kid first. I call Incompetent Kid to my office and tell her we have to let her go, because she's a liability and is a danger to the users, the team, and herself. But it's your fault. I couldn't practice all summer long because you wouldn't hire me. It's not fair. I understand how you feel, but I have responsibilities towards the team and the citizens. And you also have to understand that your mistake could cost someone their life. I guess I understand. Can I try again next year? Sure, but you'll have to go through the same process. I suggest you sign up to the training program that is offered and try to use your short experience to learn and improve. I'm very understanding and believe people can improve, especially kids trying out for their first job. Our meeting is almost over and Incompetent Kid seems to be happy with the decision and very happy that she'll have another shot. Door flies open. Insert dramatic/scary music.
Why the heck would you fire Incompetent Kid? She never had a chance to improve or to practice. You're responsible for all this. It's your fault.
Entitled Mother is walking around my desk to get in my face. I can feel her breath in my hair. She's about 1 head taller than me at this point, since I'm still seated.
Incompetent Kid is not fired, you hear? You cannot fire her.
It's okay, Mom. I understand what I did and I get to try again next year.
No, it's not okay. We couldn't go on vacation because we were waiting for his stupid call. You're not fired.
Entitled Mother's screaming bout with the air continues for about 2 to 3 minutes. Incompetent Kid looks embarrassed. Entitled Mother is beyond red and sweat is now forming on her forehead and she starts to spit as she yells. I don't remember anything from those few minutes, but at one point she starts pointing and waving her fingers at my face and accidentally pokes me between my upper lip and my nose. I stand up. I'm 6'2 to 6'3", 230 pounds. I used to be a lifeguard and a swimmer, and I look it. I have a beard and a military-style haircut. I don't yell back, but I raise my voice. Listen to me. Incompetent Kid didn't train or ask to train all summer long, so she struggled. She's 17. She'll improve and can try again next year. Had she been hired earlier, I know you would have left her behind to go on vacation. She chose to stay on the list. You chose not to go on vacation. She's okay with the decision. You have no business interfering with our disciplinary actions. They don't involve you. Either she was startled, scared, or a bit of both. But almost growling, she stormed out of my office, yelling so everyone at the office could hear.
I'm calling the mayor. This is not over. I will win.
Incompetent kid thanked me for my time and shook my hand and said goodbye, looking at the floor. I made sure she knew I wasn't angry at her. She smiled a bit, I think, as I said so. Mayor or his office never called our department. Entitled mother never called me again. Incompetent kid signed up for the training program and got a 98 on the test the following year, and was first of our lifeguard hires. To call her incompetent kid is unfair now, so let's call her Superhead Lifeguard. Superhead Lifeguard gained her new position within 3 years and worked for me for almost 10 more years, but only during the summer. If she isn't the best I ever had, she's a close second. But God, is her mother a jerk. I do really like how this one turned out, that our original poster understood that this is just a kid. Yeah, she screwed up. Yeah, she doesn't know everything. But she came back better than ever and turned out to be one of his key employees. No thanks to her mother. At least our original poster never had to deal with her again. I feel like we couldn't have gotten a much better end to this story. Maybe if entitled mother fell in the pool or something.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.